Our guest tonight, writer, director, and author Richard Martini is an award-winning filmmaker who has written and or directed 8 theatrical features and a number of documentaries. His first book, Flipside, A Tourist Guide on How to Navigate the Afterlife, went to #1 twice on Amazon in all its genres. The book is based on transcripts of a documentary he made titled Flipside, A Journey into the Afterlife, which is available at Amazon and Gaiam TV. His books, It's a Wonderful Afterlife, Volumes 1 and 2, expands the research into the afterlife from Dr. Michael Newton's work, including interviews with a number of scientists in the field of consciousness, such as Dr. Bruce Grayson, Dr. Mario Beauregard, and Dr. Gary Schwartz, who's one of my favorite people out there also. After a dream vision of visiting his friend in the great beyond, Richard Martini went on a literary quest to find out what the prevailing science and philosophical opinions on the afterlife are. He journeyed into Tibetan philosophy, made documentaries in Tibet and India, and eventually was introduced to the work of the Newton Institute, founded by renowned author and hypnotherapist Dr. Michael Newton, who wrote Journey of Souls. Now, Richard Martini examines near-death experiences and compares their accounts to similar ones during between-life sessions, the technique used by Dr. Michael Newton that allows people to access the lives between lives realm, or LBL. Or other examples, such as out-of-body experiences where people may have lost their ability to think normally, but are still having these same kind of experiences. In Hacking the Afterlife, what a great title, he interviews mediums and explores interviewing people no longer on the planet, my kind of person. As Dr. Gary Schwartz put it, after reading Flipside, he said it was inspiring, well-written, and entertaining. He said it was the kind of book where once you've read it, you will no longer be able to see the world in the same way again. And what I'm hoping is by the end of tonight, listening to Richard Martini, I sure hope you won't be able to look at the world in the same way again. And let's not waste another moment here and welcome my friend and fantastic guest to the show, Richard Martini. Welcome to the show, Rich. I can't believe this moment's finally here.
Wow, what a wonderful introduction. I've never heard myself described in such glowing terms.
Yeah, you're thinking, who is this guy? Who's coming on to
Yeah,
talk today?
exactly. I want to know this guy. I want to hear this guy. Where do I tune in? Well, let me just say, I had such fun talking to you the last time we chatted, and I wrote that up. I transcribed what we said, and just reading back where we went was so mind blowing. And I know your audience doesn't know where we went, but you and I went somewhere completely into deep space. I don't know which one to call it, but into another realm, and it was a really fun trip. And the way we got there, do you remember we just talked about an experience that you had, like a near death event that happened when you were younger, correct?
Yeah, and the beauty of that whole thing, Rich, is that it was so spontaneous. I don't
Absolutely.
know, we were talking about the near-death experience, and then, I don't know how you did, but you just said, you know what, you want to get hypnotized right now? You want to go back to that place now? And I said, well, okay, sure, why not? And it happened so spontaneously, so not planned. It was nothing on our notes was about that.
I know, very
And the
funny, very
journey,
funny. Yeah.
it made such an impression on me, Rich. Like, when I closed my eyes, especially when I was getting ready for tonight, I could close my eyes and visualize the spirit guide council, the
Oh my
place,
gosh.
if you want to call it a place, like you said, it was out in space and time, and I can picture it again. I can kind of see it again, and I know tonight. That's why my heart's pounding because I know we're going there
We're,
again
that's
tonight. So.
fantastic. That's great. Well, I just let me give your audience a little bit of, just background, which is not about me, but it's about this technique, which is I'm not hypnotizing anybody. We're just talking. I'm, drinking my tea and, having a conversation. And I've found that you can talk to people pretty much about any memory that they have, And what I try to do is I focus on the memory, have them sort of freeze it like a hologram. And you know how holograms are. It retains all the information of whatever it's pictured or whatever it's aimed at. So what I try to do is then go into the hologram and just see where we can go. But because I'm sort of familiar with the territory and I'm familiar with the architecture of the afterlife, it's in my mind, I'm able to sort of see where the signposts are. Let's just put it that way. So, so this is fantastic because, of course, not everybody realizes we all have counsels, we all have guides, all of us, everybody listening to your voice, we've all had this experience that we're going to talk about. It's not unique to Heather, it's not unique to me. In my case, when I started my documentary, whatever it was, 2011, I think was when it came out, I had never had a past life regression or an experience or been under. I didn't believe you could be under hypnosis. I just felt like, oh, people are making stuff up. But I had that experience, and I went to a place and I met my counsel, and ultimately I've been doing this so long now. I've filmed over 50 sessions of people under deep hypnosis, but in the past couple of years, I think ours was in 2017, actually, January.
Yeah.
Or December, I forget. But what I've discovered, and I think you might have been like in the first handful, was where if you talk to somebody who's had a near-death event or some consciousness-altered event, you can, in an easier way, or you're talking to a medium, let's say, and you say, well, let's go to a memory that you had when you were a child. Because they're used to talking about it, or they've meditated a lot, whatever, you can walk into through that door. And so in this case, the structure is that I asked your guide the last time we spoke. We started with your near death event. We went into space. That's kind of the way you remembered it. And we asked if there was a guide or somebody we could talk to. And this person came forward. I won't say his name because, we'll see if he's around. And I asked him if he could take us in to visit your council. And he said, yeah. And you described what this council was. All right, so let's just set the stage. We're going to now talk to your council, which, for people tuning in, are going to say, like, what? My council? In my books, I talk about how Dave Schultz's father, when Dave Schultz was killed by John DuPont, he recounted the story at his eulogy where he said, my son came to me when he was 5 years old, and he said, Dad, can you keep a secret? And his dad, Philip, said, yeah, what's the secret, son? And his son said, well, I spoke to my counsel before I came here. I'm here to teach a lesson in love, but I won't be here very long. So the counsel was the thing that jumped out at me because I've heard so many people under deep hypnosis talk about their counsel. So without further ado, shall we?
Oh, are you sure? Are you sure? You know what I'm thinking is, well, maybe after the break might give us a whole lot of time. I'd hate to get in the middle of it and then have to break to a break. I think after the break, and we'll have
Well, how many?
time.
Well, tell me
Right.
when is the break coming up?
Oh, about 10 minutes.
Oh, about 10 minutes. Okay, all right. Well then,
So, yeah.
well, can I tell you, your counsel is tapping their fingers. They got their jaws on their hands, right? They're waiting for you.
Really?
Well, of course.
Oh, okay, that's very interesting to me. So, do they know before we're trying to contact them? Do they know that this is going to happen ahead of time?
In my mind's eye, they're all tapping their watches. Like we got better
Oh my
things to do
God.
than wait around for your commercial break. So, but in the
Oh my God.
meantime,
I know.
all right.
I
Well,
know.
let's just
Well,
say we'll
I
talk to the
got.
council after. But
Okay.
let's talk to your guide. Now, do you remember
Okay.
what your guide looked like?
I do, and it was sort of a funny look, which made me think, wait a minute, I must be inventing all of this because he looked like an old Chinese master. He had long robes, he had long white hair, he had a long white beard and mustache, very trimmed. He looked like I say, like what you would imagine if you climbed the hill to find the guru.
Well, let's shift from past tense to present tense.
Okay.
Can you see him now?
Yes, I can. I can see
So,
him in my mind.
okay, and tell me what's he wearing today? Because he might be wearing something different.
Well, it looks like he's got darker robes on than he had before. They
Okay.
look dark blue. and he's got a white scarf, long white scarf around his neck over these dark blue robes.
Very good. And first, I want to thank him for allowing us to have this conversation, and I want to ask him directly: is it okay if I ask you some questions? And what does he say?
He's nodding his head. He's saying, yes, be my guest.
Very good. And if you could put in Heather's mind a name that we can call you today. I know we had a name that we spoke to you with the last time, but what's a convenient letter or name that we can use for you, just so we can have this conversation?
Okay, now he's laughing at me and he says, you know what my name is. I'm Chown.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Yes, I remember your name, Mr. Chown, and I appreciate you putting it in her mind. And well, let me ask you, we spoke a couple of years ago, and what does that feel like for you to talk to somebody 2 years later? Does it feel like, what does it feel like?
Well, the first answer is he says, why has it taken so long? You know, I've been here this entire time. Why have you struggled and not asked me? Why haven't you called me? I would have been here at a moment's notice.
Very good. And you're not talking about me, you're talking about her, aren't you?
Hmm. Yes.
Very good. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't like I forgot to call him, because I don't want
And
to
he's
get,
very
yes?
confused about that. He's like, but you've been going through this big bad struggle, and why haven't you called? I'm right here.
Okay, very good. And so can I ask you some questions about that, Mr. Chown, without going into too many details about Heather's struggles or what she's going through? So what's going on? Is this part of her journey? Is this part of something that she signed up to experience? What's happening?
It's part of the deal.
Part of the deal. Very good.
Yeah.
And let me ask you, she had a mentor who passed away not too long ago, and I was just wondering, Mr. Chown, is this a right time to bring him forward, or should we talk to him later?
He's here, and he's on his way. On his way. He's not
Not quite here yet. That's
not
okay.
standing by me right now. But if you want to go see him, we can go see him.
Okay, very good. Well, why don't we do that? Because we have a few minutes. Why don't we go and see him? Because you made that suggestion, Mr. Chown. Let's go see her mentor. And if you could put what he looks like now in her mind's eye, about how old is this mentor?
He's I get an actual number here, 55.
55. Very good. And when he passed away, your mentor was, how old was he?
72.
72. So very good. He's looking pretty fit, I would guess, right? Is that correct?
I can see him, Rich. I can see him. I can see him right now.
Oh,
I can see him.
all
I
right.
can see his hair. He's got it's a
That's
little
great.
salt and pepper, darker hair, a little longer than I remember. Is wearing a green polo type shirt. Doesn't have a logo on it. There's a little pocket, and he's got some jeans on and those shoes. I always remember him wearing.
So
And
do
he
me.
says, "Don't make fun of my shoes. They're comfortable."
Very good. Do me a favor. Could you go up to him and take a hold of his hands?
Me?
Yeah. Just
Yes.
get as close as you can and tell me, what does that feel like?
Oh God. He's smiling at me,
So,
and he says, "It's about time."
okay, very good. Well, listen, somebody asked me, I was on some other show and they asked me to talk to him. They said to me, why don't you talk to Heather's mentor? And I said, well, it's not up to me to talk to her mentor. It's up to Heather. So obviously, I didn't realize we were going to do this show. But when I said that at the time, now I realize why I said that. Because it's not up to me to talk to him. It's up to you. You were somebody who knows him. You were somebody who still knows him. So what's the feeling of his hands? Are they soft? Are they hard? Are they cold? Are they warm? What is that?
God, it's very strange right now, Rich, because I can feel my physical body, but at the same time, I can feel my energy body holding his hand, and it's just like life.
Oh,
It's warm and soft. I can feel his big, strong hand.
very good. Do me a favor. I want you to step around behind him. Just shift your consciousness to how he looks
Okay.
at you. What do you look like to him? Do you look like you do now, or different?
He is seeing me in an old outfit that I once wore for some reason.
Okay.
It's a little short sleeve black shirt and this long skirt that I have that has diagonal lines on it. For some reason, he's got me in that. I don't know why.
Well, let's not judge that. That's a different image than what you're wearing right now. So this is his
Right.
image of you, and that's why I asked. And so now step back in front of him. You're holding his hands and look into those eyes. What color eyes does he have? I forget.
They're dark brown,
Dark
almost
brown.
black.
So can I ask you some direct questions? And it's up to you if you want to use his name.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay. Do you
I'm
want
very relaxed.
do you want to use his name?
Sure, I don't mind.
All right. Very good. And so, sir, would you put in Heather's mind what your name is?
Well, you know who I am. This is Art. I'm your friend Art.
All right, very good. I just wanted to hear you say it, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having a conversation with us. I know this is a little unusual, but if I could ask you some direct questions, who was there to greet you when you crossed over?
He says lots of cats. Ramona, his mom, some friends. Believe it or not, there were some people he remembers from the show. Actually,
Oh, very
Father
good.
Martin was there.
Father Martin was there. Oh, that's so cool. So, how was that a surprise to you? Was that thrilling, or what did that feel like?
He says it was a great comfort because he was scared.
I see. Most people are. And so the first person that came through, were you literally cats, or are you just talking about people?
No, he says that I looked down and there were cats running up to my feet. That was
Oh,
the first
that's great.
strange thing.
That's very good. Now, Art, I got to tell you, I've talked to a few people, and usually a pet or an animal or somebody, some animal they knew is the first person to greet them because it puts them at ease because they realize that's something they love, right? Someone they loved, and it puts them in this mindset to accept what's about to come next. So that's pretty interesting. So it didn't take you very long at all to realize that you were on the flip side, did it?
As soon as he saw Ramona,
Ah.
and then here comes Father Martin, and he finally started to realize. But he says it was a great shock. I didn't expect to find myself here, and I didn't expect that there was a here.
I understand. I understand. It's like when I talked to Harry Dean Stanton, who was an avowed atheist and a skeptic, and he told me, what it was like for him to cross over, and he was like shocked, like, oh, first he thought it was a dream, and then he realized this isn't a dream. Oh my gosh, everything I've been arguing about for so many years was absolutely wrong. So I'm just so glad to talk to you. What a treat. I'm sorry that you and I weren't able to speak while you were still on the planet, but this is probably the best way for us to speak, isn't it?
He loves being on the radio. He knows we're on the radio.
Very good. Of course he does. Of course he does. Art, you've been standing by to talk to Heather, haven't you?
He needed someone to help me bridge it because he's saying Heather's struggling with this so hard. I
Okay.
couldn't get through her pain, so he's saying we needed a third party to help bridge it. So, and he's getting a huge kick out of this, by the way. I got to tell you, Rich, he's getting a huge kick out of it.
That's great. I'm so glad to hear it. So let me ask you some other mundane but also very cogent questions. What do you miss about being on the planet, Art?
Smoking.
Okay, very good.
And eating, yeah, and eating and being able to talk to people. He wants to call people, and he can't call anybody.
Okay, now Art, here's the interesting thing, because you don't know, but I've been working on this for quite some time and trying to help people to contact their loved ones on the flip side. And I'm going to run something by you, and please correct me if I'm wrong or add something, which is I tell people take out a photograph of your loved one, ask them questions, say their name aloud, and then when you hear an answer to your questions before you can actually form the question, then you'll know you have a connection. Is that correct?
He says Heather does that. She's got my picture. She does that, and I'm trying to answer her. She doesn't always hear me. And that's very frustrating. I'm talking. I'll answer five, six, seven times in a row. She doesn't hear me. So he wants me to ask you, how does help Heather to hear me? Because this is very frustrating.
Well, I'll tell you one way is to give her an image instead of a sound. Because you're used to talking. You're used to trying to use your vocal cords, let's say. You're trying to get that frequency into her ear. That's kind of hard. It's a little easier for people to picture things. So if she asks you a question, maybe you could pop an image into her mind. Like she's looking at your photograph and she asks you, should I have chocolate or vanilla ice cream? And you can put an image or use the engram that's in her brain to tap on that so that she can get an image. I know some people can hear things. I've heard people on the flip side before. It's very hard for them to slow their energy down to actually get to a point where they can form a word or use my brain to get that word to form. Well, you tell me, Art, what I've heard this before, that it's frustrating for people on the flip side because they know they still exist and their loved ones don't really believe they do. So, what have you tried to do? Have you tried dreams?
Oh, everything. I talk to her when she's sleeping. I try to I tamper with electronics in the house. I nudge her. I bump her. I mess with the blankets. I tamper with all kinds of stuff. And half the time she notices, and half the time she doesn't. Now he's getting a huge. Oh, he's so entertained by this right now, Rich. Can we roll into our break
And
and
we
you
can
can
roll
finish
into
off?
her, absolutely, and we'll come
I don't
back.
know how
We'll.
you do this
I
where
I
I
didn't do
hear both
anything. We're gonna
at the
come.
same time. It's
He's
amazing.
been waiting to talk to you. We'll be back with Art Bell after this break.
Oh my God. I told you guys we were going for a ride, and Rich is one of the coolest people ever, and you're going to see why. And you know what? This is all happening spontaneously. I'm not a channeler. This is Rich and his technique. How he's able to do this, maybe we'll find that out a little bit later. We'll be right back to continue on this conversation, this out of this world conversation that we are having right now. I'm Heather Way. Everybody to keep in mind while Rich and I are doing this tonight that you can do this also. Again, we're using me as an example, just show you what is possible and that this kind of thing can happen. And it is just as wild for me as it probably is for those of you out there to listen to it. And Rich, my God, over the break, he's still talking to me. And the one thing I want to tell you right now, I am overwhelmed with the most incredible sensation of joy that I have felt in the longest. I can't remember ever feeling this much joy all over, all through. I feel like I'm a light bulb that's turned on all the way.
That's so fantastic. I'm so glad to hear it. Well, what was he telling you over the break? Was he just telling you private stuff, or what does he want to tell you?
He was saying, I'm standing by for questions. Aren't there going to be more questions?
Yes, sir. I have a whole list of questions, but that I'm ready to go. I mean, listen, Art, you were the master of the interview, and I heard you, do interviews for many years, and I just know how good you were and are at listening to somebody and then, adding more questions and digging deeper. So I'm going to ask you some standard questions, and if we'll see where they take us, and hopefully, we can figure out what's going on over there on the flip side. So who are you hanging out with? Are you hanging out with Father Martin, or put it in her mind's eye, who are you hanging out with over there?
I can see a picture of Ramona.
Okay, and tell me who Ramon is again.
Ramona was his soulmate. That's what he's saying. This is my soulmate. And
Okay.
we're together here, which makes it so much easier to be here. And I can see an image of her. She's got long, straight, very dark brown hair, almost black. And she's also got a warm look on her face, a very friendly expression on her face.
Very good. And tell me, how do you occupy your time? What do you I mean, do you do anything? Do you or any kind of um, you know, leisure time activities? I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'm going to ask you questions about that too. Do you do anything?
I watch people.
Okay, very good. So you're watching people from over there. How do you do that? Just describe that process.
He gets into the home, gets into the room, and he'll observe people. And when that gets boring, he'll go to places around the planet that he wants to see, and he can watch things happen, and that's very entertaining. And then now he's starting to say something a little weird about the landscape of where he is. He says, Heather, there's a landscape here. This is a place. There's places to go here, and places to explore here.
So what would be a
So
place of entertainment for you to go explore? Give her an example. What would it be? Indoors or outdoors?
there's outdoors locations, landscapes of the spirit world. He's calling it, that he can go to. That's very calm, and there's other spirits there, other intelligences, and he tries to talk to them to try to learn from them.
Okay, very good. So let's try to examine one of those now. Just put it in Heather's mind, like some place that you've been that you found entertaining. Could be inside, could be outside. If it's outside, just describe what the environment looks like. Or if it's inside, what does this place look like?
I'm seeing trees, but Rich, they're not normal color. These trees are orange and red.
Very
They
vibrant.
look, yeah, and they look like, what's weird, they look like pine trees, oak trees. I see a rolling hills type landscape. There's a couple scattered houses,
All right,
and
all right. I'm going to
there's
do
a
something.
lake.
Art, I'm going to do something really unusual for this audience, and I'm sure you're aware of it, and the audience is not, and maybe Heather is not. But I want you to walk her over to one of these trees. Could you do that? Just pick one.
Okay.
So now
Now
get.
I seem to be going down. Okay, and now I can. Okay, now I'm sort of looking through the eyes of my energy body. How I'm sitting here, I have my eyes closed, and I can see my energy body. I can still feel his hand. He was holding on to my hand the whole break.
Great.
And now we're at the foot of a very, very tall, what looks like some kind of sequoia, but it's not normal color. The trunk is green, and the leaves, it's all bright orange and red.
Fantastic. Now, would you do me a favor? Art, help her put her arms around this tree and just describe what the feeling is.
Ah, it feels sort of rough, but it's weird. Is it sort of feels like if I wanted to, I might be able to put my hand through it.
I'm going to ask you to do that next. Because it's etheric. It's a tree that is energy more than and thought and mental process than it is something that exists, of course, right? So put your hand inside the tree. Put your arm inside the tree. What do you feel?
Okay.
What do you feel when you do that? Is there any emotion associated with that?
Now it's a little difficult to push through. I can push through it, and then it feels very dense.
Hmm.
And I'm. Oh my God!
Thank
This
you.
thing has. This thing has thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I'm going to
It's
ask.
alive.
I understand. I know what we're doing. Okay, so that's why I brought you here. I want you to address this thing, this tree. Now, what sense do you have of it? Is it a male presence, a female presence, neither, or both?
I'm picking up a bit of both, but more male.
More male. Very good. And Mr. Tree, for the sake of this conversation, would you give us an initial or a name that we can use to address you? Don't judge whatever you hear. Just it's okay. He's just going to give you something.
We're getting the. Gonna laugh. He says, "Call me John."
Very good. Yeah, I totally understand. So, John, may I ask you some direct questions?
Yes, if
Oh,
you want.
very good. So, please, would you explain to us how it is that you're an energy within the tree? Is it that all trees are sentient, that all trees have it, or you just represent all trees? What do you represent?
I wanted to be this here.
You wanted to be this here. Very good. Are you also incarnated somewhere else?
no, I'm here.
Just here. Very good. Thank you. Were you incarnated on our planet Earth at some point?
Yes.
How many years in Earth years did you live? Whatever number comes to mind.
We're getting an exact figure, 643 years.
643. Let's try not to judge it. I know what we're hearing is odd and unusual, but you must trust me. I've done this quite a bit, and I've talked to a few trees. And so, John, this is an opportunity for your voice to carry beyond talking to me or just talking to Heather and just talking to Art, which is how can we help our planet?
Talk to us.
And did humans used to be able to talk to you?
At least you tried.
Okay. And was there a time in our history, I mean, 600 years ago, you're probably aware of it. Was there a time in our history when humans could come and talk to you?
When you did, you tried, and we were here, we listened. Really, you're not talking and you're not listening.
Very good. I appreciate that, and I've heard that a few times. And John, I'm going to say something to you instead of asking you a question. I heard this just the other day, having this same kind of conversation. I asked a tree, or whatever this entity that was within a tree, what the best method for humans to help our planet. And he said, plant 1,000,000,000,000 trees, because that would bring the temperature down, it would clear up the atmosphere, oxygen, etc., etc. What's your opinion on that sentence?
Yes, please. We need more. We need more of us. And he's telling me something odd, that he wasn't always a tree. He was once a human that wanted to be this in the spiritual landscape. But he says, yes, please, make there more of us. The more of us there are, the more of us there are to listen to you.
Okay.
Both of us. He's saying it's both of us. What does that mean?
It's both of us. It's both of us, me and him, having this conversation. Is that what you mean? Us being able to communicate, opening ourselves up to being able to hear you. Is that what you mean?
To care for the planet Earth.
I see.
So I think he's saying it's the trees and it's the humans. There's too many humans. You need more trees. You need more plants of all kinds.
I see. So to create oxygen. But let's just pick apart this sentence you tossed in there. So you had an incarnation at some point. Was it part of your conscious energy was human at some point? And if you could put that in Heather's mind, when was that?
Yes, and what I see is of armor. I see he was some kind of fighting man.
Okay.
I don't know about all my history, but he has a weapon. He's got an axe. Doesn't look like for chopping trees. It looks like a war axe.
Like a Viking kind of thing, or before that?
It's curved like that. The blade is curved like that, and he looks like tired and dirty and like he's been fighting. And he says, "I used to kill, and trees don't kill."
So, John, let me ask you, put a year in Heather's mind on the planet. What year did you have this existence as a warrior?
Oh gosh, 1240.
Okay.
1249.
And what country were you in? Were you in Europe and Asia? Were you in Africa? Where on the planet were you, if you were on the planet?
In the north, where it's cold.
Ah, okay. So, are we talking Viking era?
If that's what you call it.
Okay, very good. Well, up north, Vikings, 12th century, yeah, I would think so. But still, it might have been, I don't want to get into those details of it. But John, I appreciate this conversation we're having. I just wanted to open up this door because trees are sentient. You can talk to them. The whole idea of being a tree hugger is really an actual directive. Go hug a tree, pretend you can talk to the tree, and you'll hear something from the tree. Since I started this research, since then, I've actually tried it and thought, oh my gosh, I feel something. I'm feeling like some kind of energy. Anyway, but listen, we've got Art here. Oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Wild. That is just so wild. Just to feel
So, so Art, let's go back to you for a second, my friend. I didn't mean to leave you high and dry while we talked to John, but these are the kind of questions that I love to ask. So, in terms of you said you'd like to travel around, you travel to different places. Describe to us how is that? How is the modus of travel? How do you go from one? Is it a physical thing or is it a mental thing?
It's mental. He can think of it and he's there, or he can think about traveling there and actually experience the journey if he wants to.
I see. So what would be a place on the planet on the planet because we can sort of get a visual of that. Where might be a place that you would love to go or you like to go? Where is a place that you like to go?
Cities:
Like
London,
London,
Paris, Dubai.
Dubai. Now let me ask you, does anybody see you there? Does anybody notice you like pets or or animals or I don't know, somebody. Does anybody notice you?
Once in a while, a dog or a cat may notice, sometimes children. Other than that, nobody notices me, and he really doesn't like that.
You find that annoying.
Doesn't like that
Well, it's
part.
hard to go from a celebrity to somebody that they just kind of don't see. But still, I'm kidding. So, but let me ask you this. If if you could project yourself to some place where you could be seen, how would you do that? What do you have to do? What's the mental process you have to go through to try to be seen or try to be felt by Heather while she's sleeping? What do you do?
He says he tries to remember what it's like to be solid, and he's still learning that this is very difficult, and that frustrates him that he can't do it. But he tries to remember what it's like to again be solid, and project resistance to objects so that he could stand on a floor rather than go through it.
I see. Wow, that's fascinating. Have you run into anybody over there that you were surprised to see?
Brad Steiger.
Rod Steiger. Very
Brad,
interesting.
Brad,
Who's,
Brad Steiger.
oh, I'm sorry, who's Brad Steiger?
He wrote a book with Brad Steiger, The Source. One of my favorite guests, he says. He had him on the show. He loved Brad, and they were friends,
So,
and ran across him.
and so what was that like? Was that old home week or were you guys surprised to see each other or tell us, what was it like?
Well, he was glad to find somebody he could make sense of all this with.
Very good. Somebody that you know. Oh, I have a question for you. So, do you do any activities, like physical activities? Because I've talked to people who say that they can do everything from sailing to golfing to going to the beach, or do you do any of those?
Walking.
Walking. So,
Lots of walking.
so describe what a walk for you would be. Like, where would you go?
uh, land someplace where there's lots of people, and find a path that's kind of clear,
Uh-huh.
and just start walking around. Just start walking around. There's no pain. There's no body, so I can walk and walk and walk and walk around and watch people.
Very interesting. And in the reason I ask the question is sometimes people create environments that they can go do things, and I ask, how do you do that? How do you create a forest of trees, let's say, or a mountainscape? And their answer was math. You have to do like the CGI math that's involved in creating like musical. Let me ask you, do you hear any music?
He plays music.
Ah, tell us about that. What do you play?
He he's got a recreation. He made himself a radio room. He said, I can't be without no radio room, so he built a radio
Ah,
room, and he can get in there, and he gets in there, and he plays music. He says, I can't not broadcast.
that's hilarious. So do people listen in over on the flip side? Do you have an audience on the flip side listening to you?
Yeah, oh yes. He said, oh yes, and it's starting to, and more and more and more.
Very good. And just give your audience an idea of how do you construct. I mean, I've heard this before. People talking about constructing a kitchen or constructing a house or a garden. and they everything is like laid out like imaginary. If you were going to imagine, the CGI behind building a house, you would see like, oh, there's the floorboard and here's the door, et cetera, et cetera. You sort of like a blueprint. So just if you could give us a one, two, three, how do you create a studio? Do you pick all the equipment? I mean, is it 100% there, or is it just like a percentage of what it would look like?
There was nothing there at first. I had to find a place. Then he had to imagine each thing one at a time. So I had to imagine the walls one at a time, the floor, the roof, windows, doors. Then had to imagine everything one at a time. Had to imagine desk, chair. Then had to remember specific components. Remember the components he needs on the desk,
Right.
down to every cable, and then actually hook that stuff up where he is. And he says, no, 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 it's not a broadcast out that people tune into. They're all here. They're all around me, and they hear it. So he says it's like now I have a studio audience. They're all there around him, listening.
That's hilarious. I mean, I think that's really funny and sweet and charming, and at the same time, I mean, think about that for a second. So every day or whenever he feels like going in to record something or to speak or whatever, listen to music, that construct that he's created has to be there. And I mean, if you can imagine the math involved, or just I used to think to myself, what it would be like to play 3D chess in your mind. That's what he's doing. He's playing these almost like the Matrix, playing this incredible game so that he can create all those things. I've heard people say that they create whiskey. They can't get drunk, but they can create the flavor of it. We talked to Gary Shandling, who said that he was golfing. And I said, well, how many holes do you play? 36? And he said, no, I play two. The tees are very far apart. So I thought that was pretty funny. So Art, I totally appreciate what you're saying. I think that's very fascinating. And now, in terms of music, you were saying you play music. What's the vehicle that you use to play the music? Is it a music from your memory, or are you pulling it from somewhere else?
He says, I don't need CDs anymore. He can think of it, and if he can remember it enough, he says he's got to really remember it as full as possible, and he operates as the same buttons, and he'll operate the same buttons, and out here comes the sound.
Wow. And what would be a band or a music style that you like to listen to?
Oh, he's the 50s and 60s, that kind of stuff. He loves, he's really getting into that.
Okay. Any bands that we would know?
A lot of Elvis, Kiki D band.
All right, let me ask you some, let me ask you some, I like to ask the weird questions. So have you met Elvis?
Can't find him yet, but I have
That's
looked.
funny.
Oh my
You
God!
have
Oh my
looked.
God,
All
Rich!
right, very good. Well, I
So
like to
wild.
ask. I like to ask. So now, Art, I want you to come with us. We're going to walk in to see her counsel. And I'm sure you've met her counsel or you've met your counsel. I'm sure you've met your guides and all those people. But please walk in with this. We're going to go talk to her counsel and we're going to have some fun with them. Would you come along with us, Art?
He will, and he says, don't make her miss the break. We're about 30 seconds late on a break, so we'll roll into the break, and this is the perfect timing.
Very
And
good.
again, I don't know how you're able to do this with me, where my mind is able to differentiate from these different places that we are, but somehow you're able to do this with us. So we'll come back and do exactly that, God. And I thought this was going to be a painful experience, Rich, and this is a lot of fun. This is wild right now. I can
Fabulous.
hardly, it's like having and I think I told you this last time, it's like having an out of body experience while I'm doing a radio show. It's just
Very
so
good.
incredibly wild. So
Excellent.
here we're going to go as soon as we come back with Rich Martini. Whew, let me just shake my head here for just a second. Come back into the tangible world for just a moment, and when we come back, Rich Martini is going to take me into the Spirit Guide Council, and we'll see if they have any good advice for us. But always remember, along this entire trip, you can do this. You can do this yourself. I've got some ground to cover yet. And there is a message I want to address in the looking glass here. Let me get on over here and look at it. This comes from Vaughn, who says, even if this show tonight is only for you, then it is worth it. I'm surprised you haven't contacted Richard during your time off. It would have been very therapeutic. Well, I appreciate the message, Vaughn, but this is not just for me. This is to demonstrate what can be done. This is to demonstrate the possibilities. And yes, I thought of Richard Martini several times during the time, and I thought, you know, when the time is right, it will happen. And here we are. The time is clearly right, and it is happening. So I'd like to bring our guest, Richard Martini, back onto the show. Thank you so much for this.
What fun. Yeah.
It's such a gift that you have to be able to do this with people and then demonstrate it like this on live radio. I am not somebody who's easily hypnotized, and I'm not someone who really kind of believes in all this stuff, and you just seem to take me there in an effortless way, Rich. It's amazing.
Well, honestly, you're absolutely right when you say to your audience, this isn't about you. This is about somebody on the flip side that you cared for, that you loved, who has now shown up in your consciousness to talk to you, to hold your hand. What I do is I look for little tiny elements. So, for example, when you saw him and then he was looking at you, you weren't dressed the way you are. You were dressed from some other point of view. Sometimes when people, tell me what they were wearing or what they see, it's something they don't even own. And then, you think about that, like, well, how could they invent an article of clothing they don't own? Well, it's because they aren't inventing it. So the fact that we're talking to Art Bell, that's fantastic. It's great. However, at the same time, as you mentioned, this is about people connecting with their loved ones on the flip side.
That's right.
I do this a lot, not just what we're talking about now, but I help people access their loved ones. I'll tell you, just recently a guy contacted me and he said, I heard you say, ask them questions, say their name, blah, blah, blah. And he said, my wife passed away and I couldn't get anything, nothing. He said, but I kept trying. I kept asking questions and sometimes I would feel like, well, maybe she's here. And then he said, and then like a month ago, he was walking on the beach and suddenly he felt her hand, felt her head on his shoulder. And since then, they've had these profound conversations. She's back in his life. It's a frequency issue. It's not easy for them to contact us. I mean, Art, the way he described it, he's like tapping on your noggin, like, in the night, say, hey, I'm here. It's just not that easy to communicate, but you have to practice like anything. If you're a musician, you pick up your guitar and you keep playing it and playing it and playing it, and eventually you can sit in with another band and they can play with you, and the two instruments are talking to each other. So that's what the point of this conversation we're having now. And I did reach out to you only because I was transcribing the session that we did 2 years ago, and I was, I just hadn't gotten around to it. And I was thinking to myself, wow, these are really cool people. And also Heather obviously has a great ability without knowing it to walk in and talk to people like her counsel, which is where we are now. So let's just look around the...
I mean, it's amazing. Normally I'd say, oh, come on now, Mr. Interesting Guest. This is about as woo-woo as I've ever gotten in my life. But the things that come through, the places you're able to take me, it's so personal, Rich, that I can't sit here and say that this is not a performance. This is what is coming through, and it just doesn't get any more real when you're talking about the spirit world than this. And if I'm hearing Art right now, he's saying Rich has helped to establish a stronger link. He's saying it's going to be easier now to hear him and to talk to him. So is that
I appreciate that. That's correct. I've heard that. I've heard that. It's because once we, it's like anything, if I tried to go water skiing and I couldn't do it. I couldn't get up. I kept getting dragged around the lake. But then once your body gets up, your body knows how to do that. And it's almost like it's instinct. So it's like you got to try and get dragged around the lake until you finally get up on the water skis. And that's what he's saying. Now that you have gotten up on your skis, it's easier for you. It will be easier, like a bridge has happened. You don't need me, obviously. He's not over at my house tapping me on the shoulder, going, "Yeah, we need to talk to Heather." He's over at your house, so. And also now he understands how to get that visual into your mind because you're doing it. You see, it's like
Yes.
he's
Oh, yes.
yeah. So anyway, and I just, that's just one other thing I wanted to say, which is this idea that anybody can do it. Well, it's true, and it also may be that because of the internet, because of we're talking about this in public, because we're not being burned at the stake for this, because we're able to express woo woo without running for the hills. I'm fond of saying people go into church and talk to people who aren't there all the time. They sing songs to them. It's only when they hear a response that people go, "You're insane." But I mean, in this case, the whole world, the planet we're on is shifting and adjusting, and people are starting to be able to be aware that, you know what, I'm going to stop arguing about this and I'm just going to be open to the possibility. So let's look at your counsel.
Yes. No,
Let's look at.
please. Yes.
So
Let's
describe
proceed,
that.
my friend.
Describe that. What are you seeing when I say that? When I say look at your counsel, what do you see? Are you in a room? Are you inside or outside? Where are we?
Well, I find myself, again, the energy body appears to be traveling through a dark area, looks like space to me. I'm seeing distant points of light. There must be stars.
Okay, okay, we did this. We did this the last time we went to visit your council. That's interesting. And so let's ask Mr. Chown, who we've talked to a little bit earlier. Let's ask Mr. Chown if we can walk into the council and visit with them. Are we inside or outside when I say that?
We're outside in a sense, but there is a table, and around this table, which seems to be a half circle table, there is a group of people there, and they seem a little impatient.
Like I said, they're tapping their wrists. So listen, I appreciate you, council. I'm sorry to laugh. I appreciate you guys letting us talk to you. I know you guys are busy, and I know you got other councils to work on. So how many do you see in front of you?
There's 12, 6, and 6.
6 and 6. Very good. And Chown, is there anything? I forgot to ask Art this question. Art, how do you think Heather's doing? Is she doing the right stuff? Is she on the right path?
Well, he says she's keeping the studio clean. I appreciate that.
Very
Everything
good.
seems to be working, and I'm very proud that she's done. He says, you've done more than I ever thought you could.
Oh, that's very good. Thank you so much, Art. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Now, I'm going to ask Mr. Chown, who does she need to talk to on the council today? The last time we spoke, she spoke to one person, a woman. I think her name was Chen. And you described her as sort of a Japanese woman. She represented a particular kind or a particular emotion or a quality that you had earned her place. Who wants to speak in the council? Is there anyone here that would like to speak up?
Well, he's pointing out Chen at the table, and he says, if you're here, you need to speak with David. He's pointing to an older-looking gentleman, and he says this man's name is David.
Very good. So, would you walk over towards David? Is he towards the left or right of the table?
He's toward the right of the table, third from the right.
Third from the end. And so, describe him. How does he look to you?
He's wearing some loose-fitting clothes, not robes, but he's wearing loose-fitting, what do you call that, beige shirt. It's got laces up by the center of the chest,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got some long-looking kind of baggy pants. I can't see his feet, and he's got beads. He's wearing beads. He doesn't have gray hair or white. He's got brown hair and a little bit of a beard, but it's not too long.
So let me ask you, David, can we talk to you? Is it okay for us to have a conversation with you?
Well, I've been waiting.
I'm sorry. We had a little detour. We talked to a tree. I'm sorry. We got hit by a tree. So David, may she approach you, and would you take hold of David's hands and tell me, what does that feel like, if anything?
He says, very kind. I've been waiting. And his hands feel very warm and soft, and he's very welcoming.
Very good. What color are his eyes, by the way?
He's got blue eyes.
Facial hair?
Pardon?
Does he have the beard? No beard?
He's got a beard. It's a little bit lighter than his brown hair. He's got kind of shaggy hair. And his
Cool.
beard, I don't know, I would say 3-4 inches long. It's not terribly long. And he goes, nah, I'm not trying to have a beard. I just quit paying attention to it.
And so, David, what do you represent on her council? What's a word or quality that you represent for her spiritual involvement?
The later part of her spiritual path.
The later part of her path. Okay, very good. Thank you. And David, you've been waiting patiently, but I think you want to tell us something. What is it you want to tell Heather? How is she doing?
There is more to go. There's more to go. And, yes, you got off the path, but now you're back on. Thank goodness you came to your senses, he's saying to me.
Okay.
And now you're back on track, and we need to keep you there.
Very good. David, I'm going to ask you a direct question and put the answer in her mind, and she can answer it out loud or not. What was up with this event that happened to her, where she sort of, there was some kind of a consciousness altering moment? Would you put that in her mind and explain what happened?
Oh my God, Rich. Okay, I just say it. He says, we did that to her because she needed to learn a lesson.
Okay, what was the lesson?
She was thinking about, and this is going to get into some sensitive material, but he says she was contemplating ending her life, and we're not going to let that happen. She doesn't get to make that choice.
Wow, that's very powerful, David. Thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate that. People listening in, it's a thought that everybody has, and it's a thought that we all, a lot of times we think we're alone. David, would you point out to her, or just tell us, is everybody tethered to their council? Are they always connected, or sometimes connected?
We're always here. If you can get through to talk to us, we're always here.
So, in terms of people who might be on that path or thinking about that path, what's the most effective way for them to find or re-kickstart what it is they're supposed to be doing on the planet? What's the most effective way?
You mean to find the right direction?
Yeah, yes, and also,
Okay.
I've asked Anthony Bourdain this question because I can, and he said meditation, and I said, wait a second, are you saying that you used to meditate when you were on the planet? And he said, no, if I meditated, I would still be on the planet. So his advice was that by doing meditation, guided meditation or solo meditation, or just meditating, really just, contemplating life and love and why you're on the planet, he said that is a medicine, like a way to help people who might be considering no longer being on the planet. I just wanted to get David's opinion about that thought.
All you have to do is quiet the mind. You just quiet the mind and then go deep into your mind, and you will find us if you keep looking and you keep asking. We're right there.
Very good. David, can I ask you some questions? Have you ever incarnated on the planet Earth?
Yes, long time ago.
Long time ago. How many councils do you sit on?
6.
6. Very good. And so in terms of the quality, so you've been with her how many lifetimes? Is this the first lifetime you've been with her, or have you been with her other lifetimes?
9 lives.
9 lives.
So far. This would be the 9th. right now.
Okay, very good. And in terms of her path and journey, put it in her mind how she's doing and how you appreciate how she's doing, or if you do.
Oh, she's doing better now. Almost slipped off the path in a very bad way, but we set that right.
Very
And now we're pretty sure she's going to be able to do what we've set in place and what she agreed to. Apparently, I agreed to this before I got here.
So, David, how far away are you from Miss Chen?
5 people
5
away.
people over. Miss Chen, let me ask you a quick question because we can. I'm not leaving you, David. I'm just shouting 5 people over. You showed Heather an image of herself in the future, sitting on a porch, looking at a book. What was that about?
That was to show her that she's still going to be alive, even after the impossible things, even after all of this dance with death, she's still going to be alive. And that book is in her house right now.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to clarify that you've already seen yourself in the future. You've already seen an image of yourself on a rocking chair, long white hair, reading a book in your home. And so that's important to put that in your mind as well, because you've already been shown that. So, David, my friend, what do you want her to know about this, and why did you allow her to come into your council to talk to you guys today?
She needs protection. There's too many things that could knock her off the path, and she needs guidance. If she hadn't showed up right now, we may have missed this opportunity.
Excellent.
Got to know to keep going, and you keep going, and what's supposed to happen is going to happen. The thing that's supposed to happen is now on its way.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, David. I appreciate that. So this is why, who put the thought in my head to reach out to Heather?
Art.
So let me ask you guys, are you familiar with what I'm doing, asking councils questions?
Oh, we know you, Richard.
So tell me about that. How are you aware of me? Did somebody tell you, or was it cooler conversation? You guys sitting around the council cooler and said, "Who's this Martini guy? Why is he asking us questions?" How did you become aware of me?
Oh, this is really funny. No, you just keep showing up. It's your voice. They recognize your voice. You've guided so many souls, and I guess there's council members that are on many different kind of councils.
Uh-huh.
And, so there's 4 people on my council that are on a couple other councils, and some of them are on other councils for other souls. Apparently, there's councils for certain groups of souls, and you, Rich, have talked to so many souls and taken them to these places that now they recognize your voice when you show up.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. It's a very interesting answer. But let me ask you, what's your opinion of what I'm doing? And the reason I ask this is not for a pat on the back or not for my own benefit. It's for the people listening into the audience. What's the purpose of allowing people like me to come in and bug you guys with questions?
For the betterment of all the souls. They're all intertwined.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, could we get...
No, there's more. There's more to this. No,
Please.
There's more to this. Oh, okay. So I'm trying to hear here. So when you are guiding one soul to the right thing, that then branches off into other souls that are also helped onto the right thing. There's plans for everybody. And we sometimes follow those plans, and we sometimes don't. And when we don't, that causes some kind of damage to the... There's a collective spirit that we all seem to make up of, and when one soul is not on the track, the proper track, it disrupts that field. I'm just passing this on, Rich.
I totally understand. I know this is not Heather talking, this is David talking. I understand what he's talking about, a field, and I understand what he's talking about is soul. We're all connected. And the truth is that when one of us or some of us are able to access our guides, our teachers, then it influences everybody. The field becomes easier to navigate. It's almost like, the person who decides they're going to go skydiving. Once they do that, then it's not a mystery anymore. They know how to. I've never done that, but I'm just saying. I'm trying to think of an analogy. Something that you learn how to do that you can master allows you to do it without thinking. And in this swimming, going for a swim, and once you get used to it, and then it helps you. It helps your body. It helps you in so many different ways. Your soul. Let's put it that way. So very good, David. I appreciate that, and I hope that there is somebody listening to your show right now who needed to hear that particular sentence, which is that they're going through difficulty, they're having a hard time, but they can reach out to their guides, and the way they do it is just going within, but also opening up their heart. Sometimes people come up to us in the street and say the weirdest things, or we find ourselves helping someone across the street, which we never thought we would. Those small little acts are them, on the flip side, putting those people in your path so that you can be selfless or to help somebody else on the planet. So I'm thinking,
Wow.
so David, am I accurate? Or if you want to talk about that at all, just how people can help each other that way?
Well, now he's talking about you, Rich, and he's saying you're on your right path and that you help souls here and over there. That's helping the whole energy field that we all make up to be less disturbed, if that makes sense. He's saying that you're doing that is putting also many, many souls that are alive on the right path, but you're also that he's saying something about you're able to help heal souls that are over there that aren't quite sure of what to do over there.
Right.
So they're really, I get this warm wave of emotion right now coming from the entire council that they consider you a friend.
Very good. Well, that's very unusual. My friends, I'd like to get the lottery numbers for this Friday, if you don't mind.
Oh, and what's funny is I'm starting to get numbers from all
Oh,
of them. They're all
oh,
joking
geez.
around. 99, 87, 12, 6,
Now
14.
listen, guys,
Oh.
friends of mine, I just want to say I'm going to be in Vegas soon. If you could just give me like a specific.
They're saying,
That's
well,
fun.
then you need to just listen. Oh my God, we got
That's
to run
funny.
into another break, but this is one hell of a night. We'll be right back, Rich. I want to kind of take a breath. I feel like I have all these different intelligences bouncing around my brain
That's
right
great.
now, and oddly enough, it's not a disturbing feeling. It's quite enjoyable, actually, and I think that's your lighthearted and curious energy there coming through. My God, what a wild night, and we're only halfway through it here
Wow.
with Rich Martini taking me to places it seems like only he knows how to take me. And again, you can do this yourself. You can get a partner and do this. And you just need a good jumping off point to take you in the rest of the way. And wow, I mean I feel like I'm just floating a couple feet off the earth right now, and we'll come right back and get more of this going on. And I don't know, maybe in about a half hour or so, we'll open up the phone lines and see what you all have to say. I'm Heather Wade on this plane, on this planet. I want to have a transformative experience. Oh, you need to make contact with the flip side. I mean, this is just amazing tonight. And I really hope that you can take this example tonight and apply it in your own lives. I'd like to welcome Rich Martini on back to the show. Rich, God, I keep asking them over the break, so what is it? Tell me what the thing is. Tell me what I'm supposed to, what's the thing that's supposed to happen? Come on, tell me what it is. And I'm expecting some sort of, tangible world type answer, and the only answer that I get is you're going to help other souls. You have to do this to help other souls.
Well, that's
that
a
are out there.
it's a huge answer. Are you kidding me? That can't be any more specific than that. I mean, if you put somebody, let's say you're on stage, right? And you're doling out roles, and you have 10 friends in front of you, and you're like, okay, we're going to do this improv, and you're going to play the doctor, and you're going to play the lawyer, and you're going to play the thief, the robber guy, and you're going to play the person who helps souls. Now that's a huge task. That's huge. So the fact that they can tell you that, the fact that you can actually hear it, that this is part of your journey to help souls. Well, you could say, well, how am I going to do that? Do I go down to the street corner, get on a soapbox, and start shouting? You know, open your heart to everybody and all things. No, you've got the venue. You're right here. You're talking to people. You're sharing your experience, which is profound. But also, I'm sure you have many guests on who talk about life and love and exploring, why we're on the planet. So the fact that you can help a soul, I mean, it's very specific. They're not saying you're going to help humanity. They're not saying you're going to help, something else. They're not saying you're going to help save the planet from itself. They're saying you're going to help souls. So, what does that mean? That means that whatever you're doing is helping people. And I've heard this in the research that we only bring about a third of our conscious energy to each lifetime. I've heard this consistently. I've filmed over 50 people under deep hypnosis talking about the afterlife for 10 years. And these people all say the same thing. They call the afterlife home. They refer to it as home. And they say when you go home, you reconnect with the other 2/3 of your conscious energy that you left behind. You can call that your soul, but conscious energy kind of makes it easier to understand. And when you incarnate, when you bring, energy to a lifetime, you bring about a third. That's what people say, somewhere between 20 and 40%. So while you're here, walking around, sleeping, eating, going to Starbucks, whatever it is you're doing in life, only about a third of your conscious energy is with you. 2/3 is off doing something else. So, no, put it this way: you could be working constantly, you could be striving, you could be focused on whatever you're doing, but 1/3, roughly, of you is always connected to the flip side. You're not aware of it because the brain filters all that stuff out, but your heart's aware of it. Your heart is aware. So, a good example: when you meet somebody that you feel like you've known them forever. Most of us have had that experience in life. You're old enough, you'll meet somebody,
Oh, yeah.
right? And what I tell people to do is, well, examine the moment you met them. So I'll say, like, for example, my sister-in-law, I was talking to her about that. She lives in Utah, and she was saying, I said, when did you know that your husband was the one? And she said, I still don't know. They have 5 kids. And I said, no, no, come on, go back to the moment when you knew this is the guy. And she was able to pinpoint their second date. Up until then, she wasn't sure. But then in the second date, something happened. And I said, what happened? She said, something about the look in his eye and the sound of his voice made me feel like I was home. So then I turned to him and I said, so what about you? And she actually said, don't ask him. He doesn't know. I said, no, wait a minute. Let's ask him. I said, when did you know? He said, the moment I saw her. We were in class together. I looked over and I said, oh, there's my wife. He said it before he thought it. He wasn't thinking it. It was like, what? What did I just say? So I tell people who have had those feelings to focus on the moment and what was the emotion you felt. And I'll tell you, in probably 100 people that I've asked this question to casually, at a party somewhere, skeptic, they'll say, well, the emotion I associate with that moment when I realize, sometimes they're in bed together, sometimes whatever, they'll say, I felt safe. They'll say, I felt familiar. But most often they say, I felt like I was home. So if everybody under deep hypnosis claims that home ain't here, they all refer to the afterlife as home, the place where they began and before, they planned to come here, then home is a whole different kettle of fish. It also gives you a perspective. So which is we all come here and we struggle. we get we get into the play. We're in the middle of the performance. We're learning difficult lessons. We're playing different parts. We look around the theater. Some of the people we've had plays with before, they look familiar to us. Fortunately, we don't remember all the lines from the previous play, otherwise that would screw up our performance entirely. But we are there on stage and we do our best to be focused because that's the best play, right? If the actors are invested in their part, then you believe, oh, that's the bad guy, that's the good guy. And if they're phoning it in, you're not connected. So the same thing goes for people. They come here, they're fully invested, as they should be. And when they go home, they reconnect
Yeah.
and they reconnect with who they were, and they get to see their counsel. According to these, interviews I've done, everybody visits their counsel at least twice. So the first time is when you get back home and you go to see the counsel, and when you get there, they and Dave, you can step in and disagree, or you can add to this, but they go through your lifetime and sort of give you an example of like what you did that was really cool, that that you accomplished the things that you accomplished. And let's say that you go back and you feel like, oh, I was great. I donated money to everybody. And now you're there telling them how great you were. And they'll say, hold on a second. Don't you remember that was a person who came to you and asked you for help and you said no? That was the person that was going to help change your, see? So they'll remind you of things you didn't do, as well as show you things that you did do. There was an example in a Michael Newton case where he said this guy was there telling the council, I donated half of my money to charity, blah, blah, blah. And they said, no, 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 we want to know who you helped. And he was like, I don't understand the question. And they said, you remember that time you were on a bus? And he recalled it was during the Depression, and he was on a bus, and this woman sat down sobbing. And he put his arm around her and said, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And they showed him that changed her life, that saved her life, and all these different things happened to her. He wasn't even aware of it. But that's what you find at most councils. You go back to the council and they go over your lifetime with you. It's very rare where you go back and they go, what were you thinking? you, you
Uh,
you screwed up. I mean, you said you were going to go overcome anger and your rage, and you didn't do any of that. You just were a jerk and you hurt everybody. And the person may argue, they may say, they may, what the way they show it to you is they have you experience what your victim felt. So if you really hurt
yeah.
somebody's feeling, they'll have you experience it from that point of view. And so you have to then
Yeah.
sit there and suffer through all that stuff. Okay, so enough about me. Let's go back to your counsel. Does anybody want to weigh in what I'm saying? Does anybody want to talk about that or disagree or change or whatever you guys want to say? Miss Chen, David, is there somebody else in the council wants to talk to us? You got 12.
Well, David has been nodding his head, and he's saying, oh, yes, that is exactly what it's about. And it's about making connections between souls. And again, he's going back to there's a field, and he's trying to explain this to me a little better. He goes, I know you don't get this yet, but there's a field that's created with all the souls that are on Earth, right? And when you can help one, so I'll use your example there that you just mentioned, so because he's bringing it up. He's showing me the image of the woman on the bench sobbing,
Mm-hmm.
and he's showing me sort of the state of her energy body, that it's smaller, that it's hollow, that it's hurting. And then when another soul comes to her and comforts her in that way, she gains strength from that. Her energy body grows. There's more energy to her, and she's able to then carry on with her soul's mission, which helps the whole big picture. And that is what this life is about. These are the things we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to inspire each other. We're supposed to, and these are David's words right now, we're supposed to light each other's candle, what he just said.
Beautiful. What a wonderful image and what a wonderful thing to say. I mean, I understand completely what he's saying. I've never heard it before. Never heard anything quite like that. but we're here to light each other's candle.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. What questions might you have for David? Do you have any?
Oh gosh, I think so. Okay. So if I were to ask a question, it would be this. And do I address him by name, Rich?
Well, it's up to you. I would, why not?
Okay.
Just,
I want to do this right.
you
Okay.
well, you can ask him in
Uh,
your head, or he knows what you're going to ask. Okay, he's outside
right.
of time,
Yeah.
so just let him answer. What's the question you have for him? But let your
Okay.
audience
So
know.
David. Okay. This is me. This is Heather. And if I am to continue on the path that I'm on right now, and not change anything, but continue with the path and the vision that I have right now, will that take me to this thing that's supposed to happen? Is that the right direction? Well, he says you knew that already. You got a better question than that. Now, come on. Well, okay.
Wow,
I'm scared.
Dave, don't be
David.
rough on her. Come on, buddy.
Yes, okay. I know you're scared. I know it's scary, but you've got us, you've got Art, you've got a lot of people that we are bringing to you. We are bringing people to you, and look around you. Oh my God, he says, one of those people was in your house last night. We brought you this friend. They are trying to guide people into my life to make it less scary.
Okay.
Listen to these
Do you
people
recognize that
stay
person?
on the path.
Do you recognize that person
Uh,
that was in your house last night?
I do, and oddly enough, it's very familiar with this person, even though it's a new friendship to me. And he says, David is saying now, you don't trust anybody, but have you noticed that you trust this man? Yes, I trust this guy because we brought him to you. You knew him not last lifetime, the lifetime before that, and we had to, thankfully, in this life, we could bring him to you.
Are you
So he is there.
are you aware of that lifetime before the last, Heather?
Me? I'm not.
All right,
I'm not
let's ask
getting any
David.
images.
Well, that's okay. David, would you put that lifetime that you're referring to, the lifetime before the last, in her mind? Are we inside or outside?
We're outside.
Okay, and are we on the dirt or grass, or are we on the planet Earth? Let's start there.
We're on Earth. We're on a side of a hill. We're not on a trail. It's thick bush. It's thick trees. And I think it's morning. It seems like it's early in the morning, and I think we're going hunting.
Okay, and where on the planet are we? Are we in what continent are we on? Or what country comes to mind?
We are in South America.
South America, okay. And the country that's in South America, even though it might not have been called it then, but what is it
You
called
know,
now?
I'm not sure, but I'm seeing the southern tip of South America, and I see ocean. I'm seeing ocean through the trees.
So are we talking Argentina maybe, or Chile, or
Chile.
Chile? Okay, very good. And I'm just to give us a handle on where we are. And so, what year comes to mind when I ask that question?
I'm getting an exact number once again, 1821.
You're very specific. I like that. And so now look at this person that they're showing you. Is this a male or female? Neither or both?
He's a male. He looks a little bit different than he does right now, but he's a male.
Okay.
He's a male.
About how old?
He looks fairly young. I'm guessing 20s, 30s.
Okay. And then what do you look like? Who are you in this person's life? Are you a male or
Uh,
female?
I'm also male this time, and oddly enough, there's a weird detail that's standing out to me. Both of us have shaved heads.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay.
Okay, well that might put us in a different path. So take a look at his clothing. What's he wearing?
He's got a bag slung over his shoulder,
Okay.
and it's a very dirty looking bag. It looks like he's had it for a long time. He's got a bow. He's also got a knife in his hand. It looks like a long blade with just some fabric fabric or some leather tied around the handle, and he's wearing some leather wrapped around his waist. He's also got some leather and some beads around his neck.
Okay. And take a look at those beads. What are they made out of?
Okay. They look shiny. I can't tell if they're stone or if they're glass. They're very polished, and they're pretty good size. I'm saying they're like marble-sized beads, and there's a blue one and a black one, and a blue one and a black one, and they go around his neck.
Okay, very good. And now just shift your focus for a second here. I want you to look at David's beads. What do they look like?
Oh, look at that. They're almost the same size, a little bit smaller. David's beads are a gold color. It's not gold. I'm guessing it might be amber. It's a gold color type bead, and then a white one, and then a gold one and a white one.
So let's
Interchange like that.
let's ask David, what do these beads represent? Do they represent something for her, or are they just for you?
They're to help her remember.
Ah, very good. So they have a function.
Yeah, he's saying that's something that you're going to remember. He says, I used to make jewelry.
That Heather used to make jewelry, or that he used to make jewelry?
That I used to make jewelry.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, I made these beads for our group
In
back then.
in a previous life? Oh, back then, back in this lifetime we're accessing, or another lifetime?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
yes,
very
yeah.
good.
He says, look down at your wrists, and I look down at my wrists and my ankles, and I've got colored beads around both wrists and both ankles.
Very good. Well, obviously David put that question in my head because I remembered you mentioned he was wearing beads. So let's look at this fellow back in, I'm sorry, what was the year?
1821.
1821. And the reason I ask it like that is because I know what you said, but if you remember it exactly, it just means that it's probably pretty accurate. So 1821, somewhere in South America, possibly Chile. You're on a mountainside. He's wearing these beads, but he's also got a weapon and he's got a shaved head. So what's his name?
I'm having a hard time with his name.
Just first letter. Doesn't matter. It might be a difficult name. You never know.
J.
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 And now
J sound.
Okay, and what about you? What's your name? Just the letter's fine.
Just the letters fine. My name is a P sound.
P sound.
Now,
Okay.
I can't pronounce it. I can hear the word, and I can't hardly pronounce this word.
That's okay. That's okay. It just gives us a handle. So we'll call him J for now. So J, what was your relationship with P? What are you friends? Are you brother and sister? I mean brother and brother, or what is your relationship?
We're brothers.
You're brothers. Okay, very good. So go back to an early time when you guys are in your house with your family, having a dinner somewhere. Just picture that. You're inside.
Okay.
Look around. Who's in the room?
Oh, there's actually quite a few people. I can guess. Well, I don't know, 15, 18 people, all different ages. I see an elder there, and the elder's being served first. We're all kind of dirty. It doesn't smell that great in there, but the food smells amazing, and it's actually a happy time because the memory we first landed on, we're pretty hungry out there, so you just switched gears and took us back to this sort of happy time where we're all about to eat, and the food, I can smell the meat. I can smell what's boiling there. I can smell corn cooking.
Wow.
And there's a bunch of us, and the kids are sort of running around because we're all happy to eat right now.
So what is this group? 18 people? Is this a family, or are you guys monks, or who are you?
No, this is our family, and we're a part of a larger, an even larger group. I know if we went outside this structure that we're in, that we would see other structures and other families, and we'd see smoke coming out of their houses also.
Well, let's just take a look out the window or look out the door. What do the other houses look like? Are they huts? Are they constructed? Or are we in a city? Where are we?
We are, okay, so if I go out, we've got a flap. I can go out, and when I look out, it's a great big clearing, and the ground is fairly level.
Uh-huh.
It's fairly clear, and the roofs look like like dried sort of palms on
Okay.
top that are layered, and these are open structures, and there's a little bit of a ladder that kind of goes up to a level, and they're up off the ground, and some of them have I'm using the best words I can come up with. Some of them have what looks like a sort of fabric or leather curtain around, and some of them don't. Some of them have that halfway open, some of them have it all the way open, but that's what the structures look like.
Cool. And so, David, why are you letting her access this life? Why are you showing it to her? So, she was a guy who made jewelry back in that day, in that year, 1821. So, what was the reason for choosing that lifetime? What happened that has to do with her
Oh,
spiritual involvement?
because you were brothers, and the last, this is the last true happy family situation that she had.
Okay, very good. So that's an interesting example. It doesn't mean you haven't had other lifetimes that have been fun and whatever, but he's just saying that this brotherhood, this connection between the two of you has been around for some time. So, David, is
Yeah,
is
that's
this is this somebody she
amazing.
should trust? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what we're trying to show her. Now, I hate to do this, but we gotta run into a break before I miss the clock here. We're about a
No,
minute late
I
on that,
figured.
but I can put a pin in this, and we can pick up from right here when we come back. You make this very easy to do that, Rich. So, and here we are now in real uncharted territory. I had no idea we were gonna be in places like this tonight.
Cool.
So, we'll get this break here over with as quick as possible. And now I'm in some sort of past life. Martini is going to be our guide along the way. Richard Martini is here tonight, taking us straight into the flip side. And of course, we're going way, way off planned show notes, which is what I love to do. And we're in completely uncharted territory here. Now, we ought to open up the phone lines at some point, but I do want to make sure we conclude this little side journey, extra journey that we're on right now with Rich Martini. And welcome back, Rich. This is just amazing to me because, with this new friend of mine, when we talk, we do kind of laugh a little bit back and forth because we seem to speak the same language. And
Interesting.
now I'm finding out we were brothers in another life. That's wild.
It is, but
Wild.
I also want to caution you. Only caution is not the right word, but I just want to advise you that he might not be aware of that. He's probably aware that he just unconsciously feels, friendly to you and all that other stuff. But, that part of you, let's say the 1/3 that was here, you two guys were on the path together at some point. And I'm just saying, sometimes I've seen this happen where people go, "Oh, I went to see a hypnotherapist, and you were the guy who killed me in my past life." You just you don't want to, you don't want to. It makes life a little difficult when you realize the guy serving you your cappuccino at Starbucks poisoned you the last time you saw him. So,
And that's why you're a little
yeah,
nervous
a little bit
every time you get
wary.
your cup of coffee.
Right. So, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, what I would just allow, with a grain of salt, you allow that, like, there is some connection there. You saw it, you saw that connection, and it is a brotherly connection. But of course, brothers, even brothers, don't always, wind up doing the same things together. I just want to point that out, which is people ask me that all the time. Once you realize that you lived a previous lifetime somewhere, with somebody, how does that change you? Well, of course, it changes you because you realize that there's nothing that can happen to you that's so stressful that won't get solved eventually. It won't get worked out. So, anyway, I'm just, you just don't want to walk around saying, "Hey, you were my brother in a past life. God dang it! Give me some money. Where's the money you owe me from back then?" Anyway, but
Yeah.
just to
But I
put us,
shouldn't call him up.
Yes.
after the show and go,
Yeah,
we were brothers.
well, he may already know that. It's possible. But I would just allow it to unfold in its own way. And I must say that sometimes I've heard this from council members, which is not everybody. I heard this recently, which is that you can't squeeze somebody out of the chrysalis to become a butterfly, meaning people have to sort of come to this stuff on their own path. Put it this way, if they're still listening now, that means they're probably interested in what we're talking about, that somehow it's going to help them. But there are people that, like somebody put it this way, which was squeezing the chrysalis. You go from the caterpillar to being the chrysalis, and then you go from the chrysalis to becoming the butterfly. And the idea is that everybody has to sort of do that on their own. However, when you're stressed or when you're having difficulties, you can listen in or read about or find out that the reason you're on the planet is knowable, that you can figure that out. And so if that's something that's bugging you, let's say, that you really want to get to the bottom of, yes, this is the kind of research that you can do to help you understand what that process is. But I also want to say, it's not for everybody. It's not like, you know what I mean? It's like I always liken it to me running into the theater and turning all the lights on and saying, "Hey, everybody, it's a play. We're in a play." And it's like you want to throw eggs at that guy. Turn the lights off. I know we're in a play. I don't care if it's a play. Just I'm watching the show. Leave me alone. So,
Right,
you know,
right. It'd be too disturbing. It'd just be, we're all immersed in it. It's a little too disturbing to do that. And, I don't know why this is happening now, but my phone on my end, Rich, is starting to cut out on you just a little
oh,
bit.
is it
I don't
okay?
know
It could be
why.
me. It's probably me. I'm waving my phone around. Is that better?
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how it is. I honestly think it's from my end, but if it gets too bad, I've got a backup, and I can just ring you on my backup
Oh,
just real
okay.
quick,
Okay. Okay.
and
Very
we
good.
can get you on that, because I want everybody to hear every word that you have to say. So I'll just keep listening, and if it's cutting out too much, we'll just have you hang up, and then in about 30 seconds, I'll ring you again, and we'll just keep going.
Okay, cool. Well, I just want to say, in terms of this journey, here we are. Let's say we're in Chile. We're at but I think David kind of explained to us why we took this journey. We could go to the last day of that lifetime. We could go to what it was like crossing over the last day of that lifetime. But we kind of already know who's going to be there to greet you, Mr. Chown. He's going to be there. I mean, as soon as you cross over, that's your guide. He's going to take you back to the council. So I'm thinking that our friend Art Bell might have some things that he might want to talk about. I'm just guessing. And I think the
Oh
thing
yeah,
and I
he's not done.
yeah, and so let's go back to Art, because I'm sure that the people that he raised so many mysteries in his lifetime. I'm sure there's people out there listening in. It's like, well, wait a minute. If Art's on the flip side, he must know the answer to fill in the blank. So, Art, go ahead, buddy. What have you learned since you've been over there that you can share with us?
That this is a place, that souls carry on, that there is some place after. And that apparently was one of the big questions for him. Is there anything after this? He thought it was all going to be blackness, and that's not what it was at all.
It was cats. It
It
was
was
a
all
bunch.
kinds of things. And so that was very shocking. And it was very, he says, a shock to the spirit, because that was not what was expected. What he thought it was, or what people had told him about in life, is not what he encountered when he got there.
Interesting. And now let me ask you, on behalf of the myriad of people and the things that I used to hear you talk about, what's your opinion of the concept of aliens and UFOs?
They're real.
Okay, very good. And in terms of their being real, I've heard this, we should drop the term alien, because it's just we all incarnate. We choose to come here to the planet. We're all aliens. Is that correct?
Yes, we are. Our souls go from planet to planet.
Have you ever incarnated on another planet, Art?
He says he knows that now, yes.
Okay, very good. And would you do me a favor? Because this is, we talked about going someplace far. So, Art, would you put this in Heather's mind? Where was this planet? Was it in our galaxy? Was it in our universe? Or was it in another universe?
It was in our galaxy, and the sky looked different there. The sky is purple there.
Purple, very good. And how many moons or how many suns or whatever? I'm obviously probably one, but in another galaxy. Our galaxy, did you say, in the Milky Way?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And
Our galaxy. Yes.
what would we know this by if there was a name, if it comes to mind?
We wouldn't know it.
Okay, very good.
Know it.
All right, thank you. Is it? It's not like the Pleiades. It's not like the people have a lot of places they talk about, but it's nothing that.
Nothing that we recognize, no.
Very good. And would you show her what the terrain is like on this planet? What does it look like?
Well, there's a little moon and two larger ones up in the sky. There's clouds. They're also white, but the sky looks like a deep lavenderish purple, and it looks sort of like a desert landscape, but if I look far enough out, I can see a tree line way out there.
Okay.
And I can see what looks like civilization. There's a road in front of me, and as I look out, I can tell that there's lights out there. There's a civilization out there.
So let me ask you, could you take Heather to the home or the place that you normally reside? What does that look like? Are we inside or outside?
We're inside.
And describe it.
We're inside a very large and open, seems to be large and open structure, house.
Uh-huh.
There's huge windows. There's a lot of light coming in, and it's very comfortable there, if not sparsely furnished. You've got lots of wide open spaces in this building, and there's furniture that looks just a little. To me, it just looks a little cleaner than what we would imagine a home on Earth to have.
Like chairs, kind of things,
yeah,
couches.
Chairs. There's couches, but they don't have a back on them. It's just like it's like a wide sort of cushion, and it looks like you could have a lot of people sitting there. You could probably have 12, 15 people sitting there. It's a great big table. There's a tray on the table. It's got a pitcher and some kind of pink drink.
Uh-huh.
In this pitcher, there's a couple glasses there, as if somebody's waiting for you to sit down and look out the windows and drink whatever this drink is.
All right. Well, do me a favor. Sit down, Art. Sit down. If this table. Let's just put this in your mind. Sit down at the table. Take a sip of this drink, and I want you to show Heather, without any stress or worry, what do you look like, and if she could describe your physique and your features and the color of your skin.
Okay, tall,
Uh-huh.
thin. He's got it's a very pale tone. It's a very pale tone to the skin. Almost white, not quite all the way white. Also white hair.
Interesting.
He's incredibly long and tall and pale and white, and his clothes are brightly colored. We've got it's a pattern of a shirt and pants that he's wearing that are brightly colored with some sort of like triangles pattern on it that's green, that's orange. It's brightly colored, and it's a big contrast to the skin and the hair.
And does he have two eyes, a nose, lips, that sort of thing?
Yeah, he does. The nose is not so prominent. The eyes are quite large.
Okay.
The mouth isn't very prominent because the head is rather a little bit bigger than, not huge,
right,
but a little bit bigger than ours.
So,
and he's saying we use use our mind.
Oh, you use your mind to communicate. And so in your mind's eye, just take a hold of his hands, Art's hands
Okay.
over there.
Okay.
And what's the feeling associated with that?
They're smooth and cold, kind of cold, not uncomfortably cold. Very long fingers. Very
Okay.
long. Very, very long fingers. 4 fingers, though, and a thumb, just like we would have.
Okay, and Art, has Heather ever had a lifetime with you on this planet, or is she ever incarnated there?
No, not
Okay.
here.
Very good. I'm just curious. Oh, what do you mean by that? Do you mean she's had a lifetime somewhere else?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Should we access that, Heather? All right, so
Well, I mean, if you want to go,
why not,
we've got
dude?
time.
If we can, sure. So, Heather, in your mind's eye, and Art, come with us, please. You're very helpful. Put it in her mind's eye where this planet is. First, let's ask, is it in our galaxy? Is it in our universe? Or is it in another one?
It's in our galaxy. It's in our galaxy, sure.
Okay, and what does this planet look like? Are we inside or
Oh,
outside?
God. Oh, God, Rich. You're not going to believe this.
I will believe it, trust me.
It's,
What?
it's Mars.
Okay, very good.
Well, it looks,
Let's not judge it. But
I can see,
what makes you
I can
think?
see Earth. I can look up in the sky and I see the
Okay,
universe
very good.
dot.
All right, let's not judge this. Let's just walk through this without emotion, without freaking out.
Okay.
I know it's freaky,
Okay.
but let's just walk through this. So now you're living on a Mars. Let's just call it that. And so describe the terrain. Are there buildings and structures? Do people live there? What's around you?
Well, sure. It looks like, well, what I would describe as maybe adobe structures, but it's not a barren landscape at all. It's not barren.
What?
There's trees there. It would look like, you know what it reminds me of? It's just the soil is a little reddish, but it reminds me of the landscape of the Sierra foothills.
Okay.
It's
And take a look at yourself. What do you look like? What's your or do you have arms and legs and what's your physical manifestation look like?
I do. I have arms and legs. I'm wearing something that's very tight fitting, and it's starting at my wrists, goes all the way down to my ankles. Wow, I wish I was in this good a shape now. I'm in very good
Are you a
shape.
man or a woman?
I'm female.
Female. Okay, very good. So let's just pop this into your mind. I know we're very far afield of anything that we could possibly communicate about, but let's just pop into your mind when this occurred. How is it in the future, in the past? Is it way in the past? Like just roughly.
Oh, this is way in the past.
Hundreds of millions of years
Far
ago?
in the past.
Far in the past.
This is, so we're
Thousands?
talking thousands of years into the past, yeah.
Okay. And so what happened? Just go forward in this construct. What happened to these life forms on Mars? Was it because the gravitational field didn't function properly, or was there a battle or a war? What happened to the people that used to live there?
There was a sickness, there was a pandemic,
A pandemic.
and there was also famine. It was getting harder and harder to grow food.
So, what were they doing? Passing laws that for climate change that they they didn't allow? I'm sorry. But
No, it wasn't that. It just seemed like the soil was being depleted, so we kept moving from
I
place to
see.
place because we thought we'd find a better place to grow food.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It's from what I understand that Mars itself doesn't have the same kind of protection that the Earth does in terms of magnetic field, where it blocks off the UV rays that are mostly deadly. Was that true about Mars? I've heard this before that Mars was the precursor to Earth, that Mars was supposed to be Earth. So how did it work out that you guys or that people eventually abandoned Mars? What happened?
Oh, oh dear. I see explosions.
Okay.
Oh God, these are great explosions. And I see ships. We built ships. We got ourselves out of there. And I can't tell if it's a war or if we're attacked. It's hard to tell the difference because there's just chaos. There's people running, there's people screaming, there's fires, there's explosions, there's people with weapons. It's chaos, Rich.
So just step aboard one of those craft. Just try to shift your consciousness aboard the craft. How many people are on this craft? How many
Oh,
beings?
there's got to be 3,000-4,000 people
And
on board.
and so they're on their way to it. So let's go to the captain of the ship. Let's just walk up to the captain of the ship. Let's ask him a question because we can. This is a what happens is when you slice through time, when you find a piece of a packet of time, you can just examine any piece of it. So let's go to the captain or the pilot of the ship. What does this person look like?
Oh, he's got a real air of authority about him. I'm kind of intimidated by him.
So,
His back is to me right now, but he's noticing me there.
all right. So let me
Turning
ask him a,
around, like,
yes.
yeah.
I just want to ask you a question, sir. I appreciate you just in this slice of time answering our question. What happened to your planet? Was there a war, or was it what was the cause of those explosions?
We were attacked.
By?
Don't know by who.
I
Don't know
see.
by who.
Okay. So, but let's shift our focus and our consciousness, Mr. Pilot. Tell me who attacked you? Was it another planet?
They could not have been from here. Bombs came down from the sky.
Were they from another universe or from somewhere in our universe?
They were from our universe. We don't know from where.
Okay, very good, very good. Um, so, this sounds weird, but I'm kind of versed in how to shift our consciousness. So let's just shift over. I know this is going to sound weird. Let's just shift over to one of the people dropping the bombs. Just shift yourself over without any stress or
Okay.
worry.
Okay.
Who is this person? Who are these beings? What's going on?
God, I've got so much anger. I've got so much anger. I'm angry. I'm infuriated.
Okay, hold on, Mr. Infuriated person. Just chill
Okay.
out for a second. Try to be. I understand that's the feeling. So take a look at him.
Uh-huh.
Is this a male or a female? Neither or both.
This is a male.
And is he humanoid? Is he alien or whatever the term is? I don't know. Does he have big eyes? What's his skin look like? What does he look like?
His skin is a light green and it has scales on it.
So he's sort of like a lizard kind of a guy. Is that what you're saying? Reptilian?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. That's
Very
what
good.
it looks like.
So do me a favor, look him right in the eye.
Okay.
Just take a look at him. Without any stress or fear, we're not invading his space, but we're asking a simple question. What's going on? Why are you attacking this planet?
Because it was once ours.
I see.
How dare you take what was ours?
Okay, take it easy, dude. We're just having a conversation. Don't get pissed at me.
Geez.
So,
Wow.
so I understand. So you feel like you're taking some, but ultimately your destruction of this planet was to destroy it. That was the end result, wasn't it?
Yes, to show who is in charge.
Okay, very good. And so let me ask you about your planet, sir. Is your planet in our universe or is it in another universe?
It's in this galaxy.
It's in this galaxy. And so let me just clarify. Is this a planet that looks like Mars or was this actually Mars?
This is what you know
As Mars.
as your
The-
red planet.
I see, the fourth planet from the sun. Very good. So why have you ignored Earth? Why have you stayed away from Earth all these years since this attack? I mean, obviously you exist, some form and some part of your energetic structure that I'm talking to exists in this time packet, correct? So I'm asking you, have you incarnated on the planet Earth since then? You-
We'd never sink ourselves that low.
Let me ask you, are you familiar with the work I'm doing?
No.
No.
No, I
Okay,
don't
very good.
understand what this is.
Okay, very good. We're just having a conversation, dude. Just a picture. Imagine you're watching a TV show and you don't really know what's going on. Okay, it's all right. We're not going to stick around for long. But since this event, have you had other lifetimes that were less angry?
Yes, we have peace on our world.
Oh, you do. Okay, very good. So this was a destruction of a planet that you used to live on, that you felt the need to go and whatever reason that is. But now you're at peace. Is that correct?
No, not now. We have peace on our world, but at this time we had to show that this is not your home. This is our home.
I see.
This is part of a collection of systems that are close by, and this was one of our homes. We're trying to clear out the infestation.
Okay, very good. Well, I can see that you were very successful at doing it because nobody lives on Mars anymore, do they?
Well, no, but there's no stopping you animals.
Okay, pardon me while I laugh. So what's a name that we can use? What's a letter of your name so that we can refer to you? What's a name for you?
K.
Miss
He wants to be called Kai.
Mr. Kai. All right, very good, Mr. Kai. I appreciate your talking to us, and we're going to bid you adieu because now we're going to turn to our friend David, who's on the council, and we're going to ask him clarification. David, what was the point of letting us experience that and see what was going on there? Why did you let her experience that? What was that about?
You're leading her along. She's following right along where you take her. She's very open.
Okay, very good. Very good. And did you find that is that accurate what Kai had to say about the destruction of that planet?
It's accurate, and we wanted to show her that the soul is timeless.
Timeless. All right, so what it tells us, David, I think, is that science fiction isn't science fiction, isn't science or fiction, but it's likely events and mythologies that have occurred with us or to us in previous lifetimes. And I'm going to assume that this was, maybe 100 million years ago, obviously before I mean, since then, Mars has just been completely turned to dust. So it'd have to take time and time and time and time. So I'm sure people are curious out there. Is this ever going to occur on our planet? Something like this?
Only if you do it to yourself.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. We seem to be wanting to do it to ourselves, but that's why we're having conversations like this to figure out how to save the planet, which includes planting 1 trillion trees. If they had only planted trees on Mars, there'd still be a frickin' civilization over there. Pardon my French.
Well, maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, God, I just can't believe the things that you're getting my mind to do.
Well,
I'm
listen.
trying to
Listen, I'm trying not to. Of course, I'm leading you, and I think of it. I consider this a game. We're playing a game, and the game that we're playing is where Rich leads Heather, into these memories and allows whatever. And you're amazing because you allow whatever comes to your mind to just say it without judging it. So that's the value. I know you're not going to remember any of this tomorrow, and I will type it up for you eventually, but
Oh, okay.
you see, but and for your audience out there, I don't want anybody to be stressed. They go to bed, and it's like, oh my God, Martians. There was a planet on.
Yeah, it's just so mind-blowing. And, your phone, well, on my end, has been kind of cutting in and out, and I don't know how we were able to just do that
Okay.
with the phone doing what it's doing. So do you mind if I call you on my backup line so we can get you clear for the rest of the time that we have? Because, I don't know, I was like hearing the words you were saying even when there were breaks in the phone line. And I don't know how
Weird.
that's even possible, but I was
I
able to
like
hear it.
that.
But I don't want to induce a seizure in the audience. So let me call you on the backup number.
How's that?
And that will only take
Is that better?
you coming through?
Excellent. Okay, great.
On audio. Oh, because I'm turning up the wrong channel. That's why. If we turn up the right channel, Rich, I could probably hear you.
Very good. How's that? Is that better?
Much, much, much better, much clearer.
Oh,
I was,
good.
you had me in such a deep state that before, I don't know if I could have done that, and I was even having trouble because I transposed a couple of numbers in your phone number, so at least we
Oh,
got
that's
you, and
funny.
it's
That's funny.
clear now, and I apologize to everybody out there, but we did blow through a break, and there's no reason to quit now. If we've blown through a break, let's just keep going, and then when the next break comes, of course, we'll take it at the regularly scheduled time, but it's no harm done, especially on a night like this. You had me in such a state, Rich. At that moment, you're asking me these questions, I didn't even feel like I was sitting in this chair.
Wow. Well, I got to say, that's even for me, that's a first. I've certainly walked with people to other planets. I've talked about their other planets. I've heard reasons that they incarnate here. People talk about shifting or adjusting the consciousness of the planet Earth. People ask that question a lot where there's a finite amount of people who were here on the planet and then they died, and so where are the new souls coming from? Well, in Michael Newton's research, he said that like 10% of the people that he interviewed over his 30-year career told them they had off-world lifetimes. And then when I interviewed Pete Smith, the current head of the Newton Institute, he said that number's risen to 30%. So that means 3 out of 10 people that go in to see a hypnotherapist trained by the Newton Institute come up with these stories of remembering previous lifetimes on other planets. So it's kind of, yeah. So it,
Things. I could smell things.
yeah, that's unusual. Yeah,
So
that's
I got Rich. I mean, just because I have to ask this, I'd be irresponsible if I didn't. How do we know this isn't my imagination?
it is. It is your imagination. Here's the thing. In this quest for, is it real or is it my imagination? We have to remember how we ideate things. How do senses work? Well, the sound of my voice is a sound wave, right? And it hits your ear, and the sound waves create electrical signals in your ear, which then are turned into language, which then find out the engrams in your brain that correspond to the words that I'm using. So that construct is repeated constantly in a human being, whether it's sound, taste, light, feeling, all of that is created. Something is created, all right? But we're used to the physical world. Dogs can smell cancer, bees can see UV light. There are things that other creatures on our planet can see and experience that we can't. So you just have to sort of open yourself up to the idea that maybe I'm experiencing something on a different plane. And when you examine how, so for example, I work with Scott DeTamble a lot, lightbetweenlives.com. He's a hypnotherapist. And he pointed out to me that new information coming from the flip side, so you're talking to somebody remembering a previous lifetime, it comes into the same part of the brain where your imagination rests. So everything does feel like you're making it up. But what you do is, when you get new information, that means like you're under deep hypnosis and somebody tells you something, and then you can go look it up. You go check it out. Like, is it possible that I left my, car keys in the Buick? And you find out to be accurate, you see? So it becomes new information. And that's what I focus on in my work. What are the new pieces of information that we're hearing? For example, recently I was talking to a woman about a memory of her father. And, her father had died, and we did the same sort of thing. And I said, so what do you see him wearing? And she said, well, he's wearing a watch. And I said, okay, well, take a look at the watch. Is it familiar? She's like, no, I've never seen it before. I said, are you sure about that? And she said, no, I'm looking at it. It's a leather wristband. It's a Timex. I've never seen this watch before. And I said, well, wait a second. I think the reason you're seeing it is because there's a photograph of him somewhere wearing that watch. And he wants you to dig through your photographs to find it. And when you do, you'll know that was him showing you that watch. 10 minutes later, She she sent me the photograph. She had never seen it before. She went through an old stack of photographs that her brother had sent to her, and found a picture of him wearing that watch. She had never seen it before. So you see, it's new information. That's what I try to focus on. So if you can focus on the new information, the stuff that it's not cryptomnesia, you didn't hear it. In terms of Mars, look, obviously, everybody and their brother would say, well, wait a second, you saw a show or you saw a movie or you read a book. Of course, that would make sense. But it's when you hear new information about something that finds, that really kind of makes you realize, well, this can't be coming from Heather. It's got to be coming from someplace else. You see? That's what I
Well,
focus on.
yeah, there were things there in all, and we've been to several places here tonight so far, and there are things in all of these places that we've been that I wouldn't know, Rich, that I wouldn't, especially where we just were, and then in South America, that lifetime that we went to, Life Before Last. Hey, there's a good book title for you. There were things there that I wouldn't have in my imagination, and it felt real rich when we were in the Lifetime Before Last, and I'm on the side of that hill. I could feel that we were trying to hang on. We were going to slip off of this hill we were trying to climb, and we were slipping and falling, and I could feel that under my feet. It was amazing.
That is amazing. And, it's those kinds of experiences because, what is memory other than an experience that happened? And it's one thing when you dream about something, and it's another thing when you remember something. And the difference is you remember the physical aspects or the physical feelings of being there at that place and time. And, if you've never been to Chile before, then it's really hard to construct in your mind something that you've never experienced.
Right, no, exactly right. And I bet some people are probably listening to this tonight going, oh, now come on, how do you expect us to believe this? Look, I'm doing what I was taught when it comes to remote viewing. I went into this tonight with just a very simple self-directive because I knew you're such a talented guide in all of this, and I told myself, just trust the information.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do. Open up, trust the information, and when I hear it or see it, I just give that to you, whether it makes sense to me or not. And I'll tell you, a lot of this tonight hasn't made sense when it's coming out of my mouth. I don't know where is this coming from.
Right.
I didn't know this stuff could even come through me like this. Like I could talk to David on the council. Now I know what he looks like, Rich. I can see his face if I close my eyes. I can feel his kind and warm energy. And I know what this man looks like now. And that to me is just absolutely amazing how you're able to pull his thoughts, his words, when he's communicating from wherever, the flip side, to us. That is such a God, where are the words? Where are the words being used? It's such a transcendent experience. I feel like I came into my studio tonight, and you want to talk about, we always joke around Art's famous line, you want to take a ride. You have taken me for an absolutely insane, wonderful, crazy ride tonight, Rich. This is I cannot thank you enough.
Oh, well, what's interesting, I think, and and I appreciate the compliment, but if people know me well enough, they would say, "Well, Rich didn't do anything. He was just asking you questions." And the truth is, I mean, the talent that I have, if it's a talent, is just that I'm annoying. I ask goofy questions, and I've been doing it probably since I was in grade school, where I'm a guy who, I would raise my hand and say, well, wait a second, Adam and Eve, okay, they had these kids, Cain and Abel, and then how did they end up getting married and having more kids? I was the question guy. And
Right.
and at some point I realized, okay, well, just ask the questions and see what happens. And then I started to hear contrary information, people saying, contrary to what we think or we've been told or we've been taught about many details, many different things. And and then one person would say, "Well, that's not the way it happened, and that's not what happened at all, and that's not what this is about." And you kind of set that aside and go, "Okay, well, that's what that one person told me." But then you get it from a second person, and then you get it from a third person, and you have these contrary historical moments where 10 people are telling you the same thing and it's contrary to the official record. So you have to start to wonder, like, well, I'm not making it up. Just like you told me these things, I'm familiar with the architecture of of the journey. I'm familiar that we choose our lifetimes. I'm familiar that some people choose lifetimes on other planets. I'm also familiar with some people have told me, and by the way, this reptilian guy that you saw, the angry dude, I was talk I was talking to a reptilian dude on a council, maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and she was saying to me, "This is creeping me out. I don't want to hold his hand because it's scaly." And I said, "Well, it's important for us to figure out who this guy is." And so once she did that, he told her about his life and his. He wasn't an angry guy, by the way, and I don't know if it's from the same planet. It might be another planet. Actually, I think he might have said he was from another universe. But be that as it may, if one person says I'm seeing a reptilian dude, then you can dismiss it or say, oh, I must be making it up. It was the pizza, the pepperoni pizza they had last night. But if 50 people say, I'm talking to this reptilian dude, and he says, I live on a planet with a purple sky and there's 3 moons, you start to go, well, wait a minute, I heard that. And that's the other thing I kind of have in my head, which is I have a tendency to remember a lot of things. And I'm not consciously aware of it, but when somebody starts talking, and I'll say, oh, yeah, wait a minute, I heard this from somebody. And then I'm able to connect the dots. So I'm a dot connector.
Well, I think because you care so deeply about what you're doing, and I think you're doing all of this for the right reasons. I mean, you had an experience long, long ago, and
True.
now you're getting all of us to have these experiences for ourselves. And I would encourage anybody out there, you gotta try this. You absolutely got to try this. You don't even need acid with this.
That's
I hate
right.
to hype it and joke around, but wow.
Well, I'll tell you. So, in terms of my work, if somebody's like, if you look online, Martini Prods at YouTube, there's a number of videos where I talk about this stuff. In terms of my books, the first three were mostly, like you mentioned, there were people under deep hypnosis talking about their journey, and the first book I talked about my journey, as well as other people's. So, by the time we get to hacking the afterlife, now I'm talking about what people are talking about on the flip side and the contrary things that I was just mentioning. But the last two books, it's called Backstage Pass to the Flip Side, Talking to the Afterlife with Jennifer Schaefer. Jennifer's a friend of mine. She's a medium. She works with law enforcement. She showed me that you could use a medium like a cell phone. So, I met with her today, actually, and we spend for the past 4 years, like every week, we would get together for a couple hours, and I film her answering questions that I'm asking to friends of mine on the other side, or friends of friends, sometimes strangers. And in the case of the two books that we did together, I started with people that Jennifer might know. So, like my friend Bill Paxton passed away. Yeah, I knew Billy, his whole career, and I did this experiment. I took three different mediums, and I asked them all the same questions. Where did we meet? What was the story? How did you meet your girlfriend, et cetera, et cetera. All stuff I knew the answer to, and they were all each medium was 100%. In fact, there's a film called Talking to Bill Paxton that's at Gaia that I put together. So that that's an example of real time questioning. Here we are talking to Art Bell. Obviously, he's a celebrity. Some people know him, they love him. So it's fascinating to hear what he has to say about the journey and the path. In my case, I started, like I say, interviewing people I knew, Paxton, but then Paxton knows other people, you see? So people who had passed away that knew Billy could come forward. Remember how Art said he was surprised to see that guy that he wrote a book with on the other side?
Brad Steiger, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I'm saying because of his frequency, because of Art's frequency, he was able to connect with this guy. So, because of Billy's frequency, I'm able to connect with a whole bunch of people that he knew. My friend Luana Anders, the woman you just mentioned, she's my friend who passed away and started coming to visit me. She she knew everybody. She was in over 300 movies. So, let's just put it this way: most of my books, they're they're musicians, they're actors, they're people that I met, the Robin Williams. They're people that friends of mine know, Prince, stuff like that, and they come forward and they answer my questions in the same kind of way that Art did, which is they talk about the construct of what they're experiencing. Like I said with Gary Shandling and stuff. But the next two books, and I'm sorry to say that there's two because I can't seem to stop writing. I've got these two books. One is another continuation of my work with Jennifer, where we talk to some more amazing, people about their journey and path, and they prove that what they're saying is accurate. But this other book I'm calling it right now, The Architecture of the Afterlife, and it's basically what we're just doing. So it includes these conversations with different people from all walks of life, where we walk in to visit with their counsel, and then they describe the architecture of the afterlife, how it works, where you go, who you see, stuff like that.
Well, when those come out, I sure hope you'll give me a ring, give me an email, drop me a line, and let me know so we can come on and talk all about them. Art, he's sort of tapping on my shoulder going, hey, there's another thing. He
Please.
wants to tell us something, and he says, you guys wouldn't believe this about the afterlife. But in the afterlife, he says he's able to have scenarios and talk to people that are still living. He's talking about what you were talking about, the 2/3 of the soul is over there. It's not exactly here. He says he's able to have scenarios. He can recall a specific situation from his living time, his living life, and be there on the other side and talk to those people, whether they're live or dead.
Interesting.
He can recall these things. So, so he's telling me. So if I wanted to remember having sloppy joes with you, and I can go back to the dinner table, and we can all, where I am, sit around the dinner table again and laugh and joke about Area 51 and have sloppy joes again. I can recall anything that I lived and relive those moments over there on that other side. And he's laughing at me now, and he's saying, I bet you didn't think it was like that, did you?
Very good. And now, who has he talked to that over there that's over here still, if he wants to share that?
He's talking to his family. He talks to his friends. He says, I try to whisper in people's ears at night. I can hear his voice. It's like he's right there. It's wild. And anybody that he said that he wished he would have talked to, he's talking about Whitley now. And he says, there was a conversation that I wanted to have with Whitley, and over here, I can go to Whitley's house and talk to him here, and somehow that will reach Whitley's soul here in our tangible waking world. And he says to Whitley, it's going to seem like a dream or something in a meditation, but to him, to where Art is over there, it's just as real as you and I talking right now.
Very cool. So let me ask you this question, Art. In terms of Whitley Strieber's experience, communion, and his experience of being abducted and et cetera, let me ask you, from what I understand, it's not that you're physically being brought up into a spaceship, but your etheric body travels up into the spaceship, and the people aboard that spaceship are people that you know from a lifetime that you've had on their planet. Is that correct?
He says, yes, sometimes. Sometimes people you've known, spirit souls that you've known, sometimes souls that you have not known, that it's time for you to meet. But yes, he's emphatically going, Yes. It's about the energy body, not the physical body
Very
at all.
interesting. And so I've talked about this briefly with some people, but the idea of people who told me they were abducted, et cetera, et cetera. And what I do is I ask them to access the moment when they saw the UFO, and then I have them go aboard the ship just the way we did, just the way we experiment. And I say, let's go talk to the pilot. Is this somebody you recognize? Is this somebody you know? Or is this a stranger? And almost every time I've talked to somebody, they go, oh, I recognize this person. Well, how can that be? And then they show me that they had a lifetime on that planet, that they've had many lifetimes here. In some cases, multiple lifetimes here. Let's say they started incarnating here on the planet back in the 1920s. Each lifetime allows the people back on their planet to gather information, and not that it's a cookbook, but to gather information so that they can understand how to open up the consciousness of humans so that we can communicate with each other, so that we can change. Go ahead. What does Art say about that?
Well, I'm just marveling at what you're describing because, Rich, what you're telling us is there is a big picture here that involves each and every one of us. Every soul matters. And that, if I can use a metaphor here, weaves the tapestry of all that is. And it is just mind-blowing. It is absolutely mind-blowing. Last break of the night, I got to get paid the bills here before I get in trouble. And we'll continue this conversation with Richard Martini. And if you want to call in, now would be a good time before we completely run out of night for you to call in. And you're welcome to say whatever you have to say about all this. You can call up and say, oh, come on, Heather, I don't believe none of this. Or you can tell me about your own experiences. Now, you don't all have to always agree with me, but I would love to get your honest take. If there's any brave souls out there that would care to join us tonight, you're welcome to it. And wow, just wow. I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to be trying to process this for a few months yet. I'm Heather Wade. Is a night of good radio, I tell you what, and I'd like to welcome Rich Martini back to the show, taking us on this really cool ride tonight. And Rich, I want to tell you what I got here in the looking glass. That's how the listeners talk to me during the live show.
Right.
And you're going to get such a kick out of these. All right, so Tony in Las Vegas says, people on the Facebook chat thread want an encore. They're loving this. And they want maybe an extra hour. Now, I don't know if I can do this for another hour, but I think maybe if they're interested, maybe we could talk to Art some more. Let's see. Jeff is telling me, we've got audio, strange voices under your end of the broadcast. It's weird.
That's weird. That's weird.
And I can hear that too, and it is very strange.
But what do the voices sound like? Are they just cutting in intermittently? I mean, it could be, radio waves.
Well, what it sounds like is it sounds like a couple of people talking just under us. But you know what, Rich? I only notice that when we're getting into that deep spiritual stuff. When you're taking me places,
That's
when
trippy.
I see these places coming in under us, and I don't know what it is. I mean, technically, that's not possible to happen, so I don't know. Let's see. Vaughn says, obviously, we will need more Richard Martini in the future. And I hate to be repetitive, but we are all one. Our group has been traveling together for so long, I cannot recall the genesis to have a wonderful night. And, we have a question. We have a question here for you, Rich. He says, this is from Jay, who asks, regarding abductions, how does abducting the energy body explain implants or other indications on the physical body? Now, I know that just because the trip you just took me on, but you're more than welcome to answer.
Sure. All I can say is I'm very familiar with the Harvard professor John Mack's work, where he examined and did tons of sessions with people. And I have examined I've seen the literature and I've seen the photographs of implants. What's interesting though is that I don't know. What can I say other than when you ask people what was the implant, they'll say it's a download. So it's like an etheric download that comes into their mind or into their body. And they might say that they're getting this implant. Now, it's a good question. I don't know the answer. I'll have to add the next time we talk to somebody, that's because I've talked to a number of people who said, I say like, well, have you been visited by your friends on other planets? And they go, yeah. And I say, well, how is it that they retrieve the information? And I've had a couple of different replies. One said they wear this like belt that sort of um, picks up the information, downloads the information. I heard somebody else say it was like a scanner, that the scanner like went over them. So I'll have to ask. I mean, I remember specifically Mac talking about a person who had an implant, but when they examined it, and this is the thing about hypnotherapy or hypnosis, you can slow down everything that happened in that memory. You can slow it down for a piece by piece by piece by piece. My question then is, what's it about? Why even bother with these implants? What are you doing? What are they doing? And the constant answer I'm getting is, we're adjusting your consciousness. We're working on your consciousness. We're trying to get it so that we can communicate with you directly. We're trying to help you save your planet. That's the most dire thing I've heard. Not that it's a cookbook, but that idea of understanding, like we talked to a tree earlier tonight. And if you can just put your mind around that for a second, like just allow that for a second. Okay, maybe you can talk to trees. If trees are sentient creatures and they mirror our lungs, they are responsible for oxygen. We cannot breathe without them. It makes you wonder, why would we would ever kill a tree? Why would we ever take one out? It's how we breathe, you know?
Yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship. We need them, they need us. And as you know, you probably know this, for when you take people in their minds to these places, there's so much information. My brain is just exploding with so much information. I haven't been able to give all the information that I've received
Right.
out
Right.
the air, because our way of speaking verbally is so much slower than what happens in thought. And so one of the things that have come to me tonight, and this is so weird, I never ever thought in a million years I'd be on the air saying these kind of things. One of the things seems to be because I'm so wise, but no, this came into my mind when we were talking to our reptilian pilot. And what it is, apparently, is what's done to the energy body is also appears on the physical body. So when they're taking samples of the energy body, DNA, biological samples, the person can often wake up in their bed with a scoop mark or what have you in their physical body.
I see.
And they are able to link this up. So the things they do to the energy,
Interesting.
it's that simple. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, no, I like that explanation. And what I love about it is it came from this conversation. It's not something you had thought about before, but the idea that your etheric body or your energy body, whatever that is, if it can travel around and something occurs to it. So, for a good example is, people who have near-death experiences sometimes talk about seeing a silvery thread connecting their energy body or etheric body to their body. My brother had one. He saw it. Didn't know what it was, but that idea that there's a silvery thread, and it's not really a thread; it's obviously energy. But perhaps that idea that if well, I don't know. I don't know how that would work. But anyway, I like it. I like the concept.
Just there's so much information when you've made, and this is what blows me away about what you do and what you were able to help me do tonight, is that when you make a connection with a soul like that, there's so much information coming in. Again, verbally communicating is too slow for this kind of, I guess, a meeting of souls. And from Art, I got just a flood of information. You know, Rich, he was showing me images of my own self in my house that apparently he's seen me while I was in the house. He showed me an image of myself laying on the couch with my foot elevated, and I'm laying on the couch just bawling my eyes out, and he's standing on the edge of the couch with his hand kind of over my foot, he was saying, well, I was trying to do the healing thing, but I don't really know how to do that. So, but I'll tell you from my perspective, I remember that moment, laying on the couch with my foot propped up, and I'm just going,
Wow.
oh, life's over. I can't believe how bad everything is. And I would get these sensations, and I thought it was my nerves kind of going haywire, but I would feel the sensation of a hand or fingertips running down the sole of my foot. And I thought that was in my mind, and Art was saying, no, that was not in your mind. I was trying, but I guess I'm no good at the healing thing. And there were so many. There must have been,
Wow.
I don't know, 20, 25 separate instances of images that he put in. As soon as you told him images, oh my God, here comes the flood.
Oh.
All of these instances and all of these images of where he has seen me struggle with the studio. He's seen me struggle with people trying to get the show on. He's seen me struggle with my own emotions. And now what he can do is give me his perspective of that, what it's like from where he is. And that is just uncanny. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Wow, that I got to say wow to all that. Well, couple of things I just to observe. One is, as much as, we can say that anybody can try this, there's, some people like yourself. Now, I just want to point out that most people, when they go to visit their counsel, they have anywhere from 3 to 12. And if they have, average might be 6 to 8. Most people, in my case, I saw 8 in my counsel. But
Okay.
people who have 12, like Dr. Drew Pinsky, I did a session with him live online. If you Google my name, Rich Martini, and Dr. Drew, you'll find on YouTube a 15-minute session, not like what we're doing. Yeah, it's fun. And where he's a skeptic. He's like, I don't believe in the afterlife. I'm like, okay, well, let's see where we go. He was talking to his counsel in 15 minutes. And was and the funny thing is, I said to his guide, can you walk Dr. Drew in to visit with his counsel? And Dr. Drew said, what's my counsel? And I said, I wasn't talking to you. So that was mind-boggling, because he said afterwards, I don't understand. What did you do? I wasn't. Did you hypnotize me? Because how did I see these things? And I'm like, dude, whatever. I have nothing to do with it. I just asked the questions. So, look, it's an example of what we did tonight is an example of what people can do. But I want to point out that most people don't have as many counselors. And the reason you have so many counselors, in my experience, is because you've lived many, many lifetimes. You earn each counselor. Like if you've learned about courage, or if you've done some of the compassion, you earn their role. That's why I asked that question. So what's your role on their counsel? The reason I ask it is because you earned them. And it might have been, Dave said he'd been with you for 9 lifetimes. Okay? So Dave he was 3 from the end. So Dave earned his spot on your council at some point after 9 lifetimes. That's a lot. And if you just think about it, so I'm just trying to point this out, Heather, is that you've had many lifetimes. You've had, obviously not consciously, you weren't aware of them, right? But you've had some pretty unusual ones. I don't have any memory of being on any other planets. You have that memory. I'm not, there's no hierarchy in the afterlife. Let's just start there. But I'm just saying, in terms of you're like a painter, like you're almost like a child prodigy, like somebody hands you a brush and some paint and boom, there's a little Da Vinci going on there, you see? So you have to give yourself a little bit of credit for that. So the fact that when I said to Art, and he's asking, he said, what's a good way? He asked me, what's a way that I can help? Or he's asking you, what's a way that I can communicate? And I gave him, instead of sound, image. And then boom, for him to download 25 separate images instantly that you saw, that you were obviously aware of. And now you're actually saying you can recall the sensation of that moment. I mean, that's a rare thing to be able to do. Okay, I'm just calling it what it is.
I didn't realize that. And I've had people tell me since I was, just about knee high, you're an old soul and all this, and I never really took that very seriously. And even before talking with you tonight, I did a past life regression, I believe, last week with some very
Oh.
good software, and that was pretty
Software.
fascinating. That didn't go back very far. That took
Well,
me to just a previous life, and you have taken me to places I didn't know I had a lifetime on another planet. What is this about? To me, that's just so amazing to learn.
well, yes, and but the other thing that I think that's important here is not to judge what the answer is, because most people, when you say to them, so what do you remember of this previous lifetime, and they're arguing with themselves like, oh God, I hope I wasn't this. I mean, what a ridiculous life that would be, and so they spend a lot of time debating with their conscious mind. Did this happen? Did this not happen? What am I saying? You just try to allow. I tell people, write it down on a piece of paper. Don't judge it. Then leave it aside. Go about your day. Have your cup of coffee. Do whatever you're doing. And a couple days later, come back and look at it and go, what? And then maybe ask the questions again. Just allow that it's a process. You don't have to, it's not like a download, like apparently, aliens.
Have to understand every single thing about it while it's happening. Again, I think that phrase, trust the information, is such a valuable and helpful phrase, because if you just trust what's coming in, you can't judge it, you can't pick it apart, it just is. And I think that's the way to get, if there is a truth to be gathered from these kind of experiences, you have to just trust what is coming. And there are some crazy things that came tonight. And in the moment, sometimes I had to remind myself, now just trust this. And when I hear the answer or I see the answer, just spit it out. When you were asking me years and things like that, 1821, it just came out.
Right.
And I'm going, what? But there's no room for that. When you're really trying to go down this path, you just have to trust it.
Well, I also, I do the forensic research. When I transcribe these things, I will sit down, often I'll ask for towns and cities and places and names. I'll tell you, I did this with a friend of mine like last week in a coffee shop. We were just having a coffee, and she lives in France now. And we had a conversation. I said, well, let's see where we go. And she suddenly remembered a lifetime and a date, 1726, in Avignon, France, where she was a Benedictine nun. She remembered this woman's name, Madeleine Marie Joseph Sertine. And I'm asking all the same questions, right? And I'm like, well, have you ever met a Benedictine nun? She said, well, yeah, my aunt is a nun. So you would think, oh, okay, she's making this up from her aunt. So what I did was I asked her a lot of detailed questions. What does the convent look like? Have you ever been? She'd never been to this convent in Avignon in her life, right? So, but she didn't know it existed. So I went online and I found not only the convent, I found a map that had been drawn of the convent, all the places that she described back in the map was from 1769, but it was accurate to her what her memory was in 1725. The pond was here, the garden was there, da 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 da. And then, shock of shocks, I went into a genealogy site in France and found her. Mary Joseph Madeleine Sertine, born in 17 blah blah blah, and was a Benedictine nun. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So you can do the forensic research. You can, and of course, when I saw it, my head exploded, and then I wrote to her and it's like, wait a minute, come on, you must have read or blah blah blah. Anyway, I'm as skeptic as anybody, but I'm just saying you can do the research, you can figure stuff out. Sometimes dates are a little squirrely, sometimes the person's name and letter is different. And what may account for that is back then, it wasn't important, whatever it was.
That's what made it hard to get the year. When we were in South America, it made it a little difficult to even get the year because we didn't have watches or calendars or nothing. We watched the sun.
No, but that's why I ask it that way. What's the number that comes to mind? Your higher consciousness knows the date. Your higher consciousness doesn't have to speak the language of the era. You probably spoke Spanish. you probably don't speak the way the language that they spoke then, but there's something about asking questions where you can hear the answer, and it's your higher consciousness, which speaks all languages,
Oh
understands all
yes,
things.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that's why I couldn't pronounce the names, and I was embarrassed to try to pronounce the names because I'd probably get them completely wrong. I kept wanting to say, when you were asking me, okay, now what was your name? I kept wanting to say Tonka, but it's not quite Tonka. It's just I can't pronounce it in the proper way, and I wasn't even gonna try his name because it was like 4 syllables, and there's just no way. But it's amazing if you just focus on, and this is, if there's any difficulty in it, I would say the only challenge people may run into is when you're in these places, in your souls and your mind's eye, really just look at the details and trust those details.
That's right. And ask questions. So I'll give you another example. I was transcribing this today. This woman was recounting that she had 2 guides, and she recognized one, and the other one she didn't. And the one that she recognized was the famous Hawaiian singer, Israel, last name begins with a K. He's the guy who sang Over the Rainbow, right?
Ah,
That
okay,
song,
okay.
right? And she recognized him, and she said that when her mother died, she had a vision where, she saw him, and her mother on the flip side was saying, well, yeah, well, he's one of your guides. And so she just dismissed it, like, what? How can that be? So, we're doing this session, and I say, well, let's talk to him. Let's ask him some questions. I know a little bit about him. So I said, so tell me about your song, that song. Why did you create that song? I had heard the story that in the middle of the night, he called up his sound engineer and said, I want to record the song. He saw it all in his mind, and he went down one take. That was it. It's a Wonderful World and, Over the Rainbow. One take. And
Ah,
and so I said, I'm asking him on the flip side, why did he do this song? And he said, because it was an homage to my friend Gabby. And I said, Gabby? And then this woman said, his last name is Pahani. Pahani. Well, if you've ever been to Hawaii, you'll get to hear Gabby Pahanui, who was the most famous slack guitar player who ever lived. So, so he confirmed it. You see, by me asking the question.
ah.
If my sound is going out, I'm getting my second phone. The first one's
Oh,
going.
that's all right. It's actually a very good time. I mean, we have absolutely blazed through this night here, and the airtime that we have, I mean, we are about 20, 30 seconds away from being completely out of time,
Oh,
and, we
okay.
didn't take any calls, and I didn't take very many listener questions.
No.
Hope you and I will have the opportunity to do this again, and then maybe then we can start taking calls and listener
Yeah.
questions, because I'm getting questions about animal spirit guides and all of this interesting stuff, and I feel
Sure.
like I'm putting the audience down by not getting into that with you on the air here. But
They can always write to me. They can always send me an email.
okay, good. How do they get in touch with you, Rich?
Well, I tell people I write on Quora a lot, Quora, write on there a lot. I tell them Martini Prods, my name, Prods at Gmail. So they can write me and ask me a question, and if I have time, I'll answer it.
Awesome. Hey, that's what we want to hear, because I know there's going to be some people wanting to reach out to you, and I wish I had just another half hour to talk to you, but we are clean out of time. But I do want to remind everybody about your website, richmartini.com. And are there any other web people to know about tonight of yours?
No, just keep talking to your guides. They're waiting to hear from you.
Oh, man, you could not have closed us out better than that. Richard Martini, one of the coolest people I have ever encountered. It's a style journey just pops up into my life at the exact right moment.
Let's all say goodbye to Art. Don't forget to say goodbye to Art. Right.
A tourist guide on how to navigate the afterlife, hacking the afterlife, practical advice from the flip side. It's a Wonderful Afterlife, volumes 1 and 2. And, hey, let's not forget, he said he's got 2 more good books coming. when those come out, he can come on the show and talk to us about them. What a wild ride tonight has been.